The dwarves began creating a sword for Ethan. Porphyrince asked me to put all the coal in the machine. He was asking about what was going on with Orba. The dwarf informed Porphyrince that the metal was beginning to melt. He asked if everything would be fine if they used so much solvent. The dwarf thought the furnace might not be able to withstand the pressure. It doesn't matter, pour out everything you have. Yes, said Porphyrince. Let's use all the materials and smash the furnace, but we must finish the job. He added. The master told the dwarf that molten iron was coming out of the furnace. Porphyrince asked him to keep the temperature up. He noted that it should be cooled as slowly as possible. Ephraim's strength depends on it. The dwarf was saying. They started forging the sword. 3 craftsmen were working on Ethan's sword. One of the dwarves was making a piece for the Duke's weapon. Another master was engaged in polishing this part. Porphyrince continued to forge Ephraim. The master spent a lot of time creating the sword. The sun had almost set outside. Wow, we did it. The dwarves shouted happily. Porphyrince praised his assistants. He noted what they had completed in just 3 days. The master told Ethan that he was on time. The final touch remains. He added. You said everything was ready, said the Duke, taken aback. This applies to normal swords, but Ephraim is special, Porphyrince replied. He told Ethan that the finishing touch was a mana spell. The Duke said it was the first time he had ever heard of such a thing. The dwarf told him that it was the process of putting mana into the sword. A sword? The main character asked. Yes, try to infuse mana into the sword. Duke, the master would say. Porphyrince added that if the sword can withstand the spell, it is ready. Ethan was amazed at how light his new sword was. Unlike iron, there is a sense of smoothness and strength at the same time, the Duke mused. As soon as you start pouring mana into it, it absorbs it itself, he thought. The Duke asked the dwarf to step aside. Ethan said he'd do it right now. He used the Arden clan's #1 secret move, Fire Sword. The master is surprised when he sees the flame that was coming from Ethan. Is this the Arden fire mana? That's right, he mused. Hotter than I thought, Porphyrince added. He asked all the dwarves to step back to avoid being burned. Ethan was glad for the sword's reaction to his technique. He believed that this weapon would hold up to him. Should I be promoted to the highest level? The Duke thought. Bright flames appeared in the entire forge. The flame was followed by a flash. The dwarves watched the fire. Ethan finished checking the sword. He was happy with the result. The Duke was delighted with his new weapon. As soon as I get to port, I'll send you the materials, the people, and the contract, Ethan said. The Duke welcomed the master to the Arden clan. The plot takes us to a dungeon. I see, so the undead were dealt with on the estate's territory. I didn't know that the Baron was so strong, Manhwa said. Lawrence told the knight that the Duke had asked for information about a dark magician who was able to control the undead. Perhaps that person knows something, the advisor added. The Baron is gone, but there is still someone who served him for many years, Lawrence continued. His gaze was directed at the Baron's butler. The advisor said they wanted to ask a former subordinate something. Are you addressing me? The butler asked. You must know the village of Felorn, Lawrence said. He asked the butler if he was aware of the request made by its residents. Karga's subordinate said that he knew about this village. Why did Brona ignore this request and hide the truth? Lawrence continued. You see, I don't know the details myself, but it happened sometimes. I saw it myself when I worked in the Baron's office, the butler added. Suddenly, without any warning, a man in a black robe would appear in the middle of the room, he continued to say. The butler said that when a man in a robe appeared, he was ordered to leave the room. He believed that Barno listened to absolutely all the orders of the robed man. It seems that he just happened to hide the truth about Felorn village, the butler continued. The subordinate related that he once went back into the room, calling for the Baron, but Kargas ignored him, asking the robed man how many mages are there. These are the words I heard, he added. Mages, there are several possible situations here, Lawrence reasoned. If the door didn't open, then it wasn't invisibility magic, Ethan's advisor continued to think. The butler was saying that he didn't hear anything else. There are certainly techniques for using shadows and spells, but then we and the butler guessed what was going on, Lawrence thought to himself. He informed Manhwa that the butler's interrogation was over. You seem to have caught on to some thread, the knight asked. Ethan's advisor had told Manhwa about the need to check the county's territory. He asked him to gather knights who could help. Lawrence knew that he needed to complete the investigation before the Duke arrived. We have a view of the Duke's village. The knight shouted Ethan's arrival and asked for the gate to be opened. The army greeted the Duke. Lawrence asked Ethan how his trip had gone. It's okay, nothing happened. What is it? He asked. Yes, while you were away, your relatives, on the contrary, were quite quiet, his advisor replied. Ethan was glad of that. He asked Lawrence what had happened to the request he had sent in the letter. The advisor said they were investigating. Great, I'll check right away then. The Duke added. Lawrence informed him that all the documents were on his desk. Ethan began studying them. Moving through space, so the number of magicians in the county who can move through space is approximately 50. The details are described in the attached document. The Duke read. The Duke asked the counselor what he had said. Lawrence, are you sure this is the data? Ethan asked. The advisor informed him that he had checked them out with the knights. The Duke thought that everything in the content of the investigation was logical, and there were no mistakes. He was surprised by the end result. Space travel magic and teleportation, Ethan thought to himself. It's very convenient, of course, but it requires a huge amount of mana, so usually mages try not to use it, he reasoned. The Duke remembered that it used to be the main method used by aristocrats in large cities. They bought expensive crystals and created teleportation gates, but for about 50 people to be able to use space travel magic. Ethan kept thinking, wait a minute, could this be the dark magician I saw in the abandoned mine? He thought. The main character remembered that the mage's mana level was quite high. Someone who uses dark magic mixed with the Dragonman technique, the ability to increase mana in a short amount of time, Ethan thought. He guessed that if this kind of breathing method could be easily learned, then every mage would have a huge mana pool. The Duke knew that this was only his guess, so the real problem will open up here, he thought. Among those 50 people, there must be someone connected to the order, Ethan reasoned. The knight was greatly surprised when he saw the Duke's sword. Is this the new sword you ordered? What is it? He asked. Ethan had told him that the sword had been made by the best dwarf blacksmith. It's so good that I decided to take it to Arden Manor, the Duke added. Very light and handcrafted so expertly. You can't underestimate the dwarven skill, he continued. Ethan informed the knight that he could ask the dwarf to make a sword for him as well. The knight was taken aback. The Duke noted that he was guarding his sister. Consider it a small reward for your efforts, Ethan added. The knight said that it was nothing to him. On the contrary, sometimes it seems that I have too much free time, he continued. The Duke asked how his sister was doing. The knight told him that the Archduchess has been dealing with administrative matters with Flexian lately. He noted that despite her inexperience, she is very capable. Mr. Flexian also acknowledged the Duchess' ability, mentioning that she is a fast learner, he continued. Ethan was glad to hear the news. He thanked the knight for that. The subordinate remembered that the Duke had something to pass on. Marquis Bloaton sent you this gift, the knight continued. The Duke opened a gift from Bloaton, a special pill that dramatically increases the amount of mana. He thought to himself, it seems that he has decided that my mana isn't enough yet, so such a pill will be the most effective for me, the Duke reasoned. Ethan noted that the Marquis was also remarkably observant in this world. During this trip, I managed to place the essence of the flame into the mana fragments, which then spread to important areas, Ethan mused. The Duke knew that if his mana pool increased after absorbing this pill, he would be ready for the third stage of Black Flame Breath. He swallowed it. The main character has started the mana absorption phase of the Black Flame. I will now begin to experience terrible pain beyond imagination, the Duke reasoned. He guessed that with the current amount of mana, he would be able to withstand it. First, you need to activate the Black Flame to the maximum level, Ethan thought. After the mana is heated enough to melt even iron, my body will absorb this hot steam, and I will begin to experience terrible pain, as if all my blood and organs are on fire, the Duke continued to think. He knew that after that, the negative emotions caused by the pain would start mixing with his fire mana. Ethan noticed that the fire was starting to burn black. All of the mana streams on the Duke's body tensed up. He prepared for the absorption process. Bright flames spread throughout the room. Ethan didn't understand why he didn't feel the pain. I should be in terrible pain, like I'm on fire, didn't it work out? The main character thought. The Fire Lord pointed out that this was not the case. Ethan was shocked. How was life, Fire Child? The Duke asked Rorosha what she was doing here. Rorosha was saying that she wanted to praise him. It's not about failure, on the contrary. You went up one level and I got pure fire mana, she continued. The fire spirit noted that he was able to revive thanks to his current aura. Unlike the others, you were able to avoid the tainted fire, Rorosha added. Ethan didn't know what she was talking about. Do you mean the Black Flame Breath? The Duke asked. Rorosha told him that the black flame that was mixed with pain was losing its fire property. She noted that such an imperfect fire would limit its growth. Black Flame Breath imperfection limits. He thought to himself. The Arden family became the strongest in the sword technique, thanks to the Black Flame Breath technique, Ethan reasoned. The Black Flame reflected the essence of the Arden clan, and no one even doubted its destructive power, he thought to himself. However, the technique that reflects the essence of our bloodline is imperfect. The Duke continued to think. He knew he couldn't cross Rorosha. Ethan thought back to his previous life, where he thought he had reached a level of superiority, and at that moment he felt a wall that could not be overcome. Could it be that the reason for this was because of the black flame breath? The Duke thought to himself. He didn't know what to do. You seem to have a lot of thoughts in your head, but you know, I've been reborn with such a pure aura before, Rorosha said. She told Ethan that it was the founder of the Arden family. What did you say? Yes, said the Duke, taken aback. The main member of the Arden family was Ziron Arden. Ziron not only founded the Arden clan, but through his genius abilities, he also became the progenitor of many other clans. However, too much time had passed, and there were no records left of him. There were only 2 stories that were passed down like legends. Ziron's level was beyond the realm of reality, and the flames he summoned were glowing with white light. Ethan thought of the white flame. How I am, he thought to himself. Only now do I remember that, the Duke mused. Rorosha felt that the Duke had realized something important. She told Ethan that she would wait for the day when he could summon a clear flame. See you later, Fire Child, Rorosha added. Very vaguely, but I think I understood something, the main character reasoned. He was reminded of the founder of the bloodline who was able to go beyond and summon the white flame. The imperfection of the black flame, a limitation in a previous life, the Duke thought. I couldn't summon the black flame this time, but just finish the circulation process, Ethan reasoned. He assumed that he would soon be able to do so. The plot takes us to the manor of Baron Romert, in the city of Uldren. The subordinate was heading towards the Baron's office. He alerted him to breaking news. A subordinate told Romert that the Duke was preparing an attack on his estate. The Baron was shocked by this. Wasn't he going to take revenge on Shaman? What is it? He asked. The knight asked him to calm down. He was telling the Baron that he had recently reached the 5-star level. The knight added that he would look forward to meeting the Duke. Tell him to come quickly, the knight added with a smirk on his face. The soldier began to blow his horn. The Duke's army was heading for Romerton Manor. Go to Uldren, Ethan said. A duel was taking place between the knight and Ethan. He barely managed to fend off the Duke's attacks. The knight didn't understand how Ethan managed to land more than 2 hits in a single attack. It can't be. I knew that his mana had increased, but I didn't think that a new technique would also appear. The knight reasoned. The plot told us about the red flame technique, which could only be used by members of the Arden family who had passed through the cycle stage. If you mix it with the basic technique, the Duke thought. The knight couldn't believe his eyes. He knew he couldn't stop Ethan with just a sword. The knight struck back at Ethan. The Duke was surprised. The main character parried his attack. Ethan struck back. The knight was startled that the Duke had cut through the aura of his sword. But I purposely put a large amount of mana into this strike to make it dodge, he thought to himself. Ethan noted that his opponent's punch was not a bad decision. The Duke added that this contributed to stopping his own equipment. This Duke, just how much has he grown in such a short period? The knight reasoned. He told the Duke that he would have to fight at full strength, as if their duel was not a training session. Naturally, if you allow it, he added. Ethan had told him that he always agreed. Lawrence presented the Duke with a strategic plan for Baron Romert. Ethan was pleased with that. Even the king can't object to that, the Duke added. Lawrence told him that he had already prepared everything. Ethan just had to go and say his word. Only, he continued, the Duke was waiting for his next words. Lawrence told him that the head of the Night Order had reached the 5-star level. Should we gather some more strength just in case? The advisor asked. The Duke said he didn't have to worry about it. As soon as you're done, go to a safe place and wait there, Ethan added. The main character informed him that all the battle knights would accompany him there. The Duke's army was on its way to Uldren. The residents of the city did not understand what was happening. Some of them suggested that it might be tax collection. They turned their attention to Lawrence and Ethan. The ruler of these lands, like Kargas, squeezes all the juice out of the common people, Ethan reasoned. The Duke turned his attention to the terrible state of the inhabitants. He was shocked that their faces were filled with fear and suffering. Listen, people of Polaris, Ethan shouted. You probably already know the news about Baron Kargas. He continued. Under the auspices of the royal palace, I came to check the situation in these lands personally, the Duke added. Ethan told the villagers that if he found Baron Romert in wrongdoing, he would be punished according to the laws of the duchy. He asked the elder how the Baron performed his duties. You see, the thing is, the elder said. People were shocked by the news that the Baron could be punished for his actions. Duke, we want to bring the Baron to justice. One of the residents shouted. The others supported him. The inhabitants said that the Baron should be punished. He's making our lives look like hell. The man shouted. We have nothing left to eat ourselves. Stop it. The young man shouted. They asked the Duke for help. Glory to the Duke. People shouted. They continued to glorify the Arden family. Ethan said he heard their point of view. I am Ethan Arden, and I swear in the name of my family that I will punish the Baron, said the Duke. He asked people to attach evidence of the Baron's evil deeds and bring it to him. Lawrence noted that Ethan was well prepared. Is this the secret organization? The main character asked. Yes, it turned out quite well. If you visit 2 or 3 more villages, I think you will be able to gather enough evidence, added. Hans, is that true? Shimon asked in surprise. The subordinate said that he heard it from a spy. Hans informed the Count that Ethan had attacked Baron Romerton's estate today, and Lugon knows absolutely nothing about it, he continued. Shimon praised Hans. He asked him to send a man there so that Lugon wouldn't hear about it. We'll see, Lugon Emilton. The Count mused. Will you be able to act so brazenly when the Duke robs you of your subordinates? Shimon continued to think. He assumed that even if the Duke lost, he would still remove Lugon from office, forcing him to answer for all his actions. I didn't think that everything would turn out so well. The Count thought to himself. The action takes place in the Romerton estate, in the city of Uldren. We have a view of his estate in front of us. Ethan was standing in front of the Baron. He expected further action from the Duke. Zifron asked Ethan why he had visited him. I should have at least warned you in advance, he added. The Duke asked him to stop talking. Ethan asked him if he knew what it was. He wanted to hear the Baron's explanation. A book of notes fell at the Count's feet. He said he knew about its contents. Did you get this from that village before you came here? Zifron asked. He added that he would visit the village after dealing with Ethan. The Baron ordered Merlin to deal with the Duke. Duke, you are either too bold to come here alone, the headman would say. Did you think we would tremble in fear of you? He continued. He noted that due to respect for the Duke's status, he might not fight at full strength. Ethan laughed at his words. The Duke had told them that he was even worse than Baron Kargas. Is that all you can tell me? Ethan asked, annoyed. Merlin was taken aback by his confidence. I know that you are proud of your bloodline, but will you still feel the same way when you see my abilities in person? The head asked. Merlin attacked the Duke. Ethan was taken aback. The head asked him how he could assess his abilities. You seem to have enjoyed my greeting. He continued. Merlin asked Ethan if he'd ever seen a real fight. The Duke was surprised at his audacity. Ethan was thinking that Merlin had acted too quickly. Zifron asked Merlin to wait. Duke, forgive me for being rude, but you wouldn't have listened to me any other way, he said. I believe we have just seen the difference in our abilities, the Baron continued. He asked the Duke if he would listen to his suggestion. Zifron added that after Ethan listens to his suggestion, he will change his mind. He didn't think there was any point in them fighting. The Baron told the Duke that the real opponent was Count Shimon, namely Warlord Kargas, who chased you to the outskirts when you were in a coma. He continued. The Baron added that he was a member of Lugon's faction, so he was on hostile terms with him. He believed that he had a suggestion that would please the Duke. Ethan was amazed that they'd pointed a sword at him in the beginning, and now they were trying to negotiate with him. The main character asked what the sentence was. Zifron asked me to trust his faction. If you take our side, no one will be able to stop us, he said. The Baron believed that after that, they would blow Count Shimon, who had tormented the Duke, to smithereens. He guaranteed Ethan's safety. The Duke began to laugh. The Baron didn't understand why he laughed. You seem to have lost your fear, even your shame, Ethan said. That's your specialty, pathetic worms, right? Zifron Romerton. The Duke shouted. The Baron was baffled. Ethan asked the Baron how he could guarantee his safety. You're just some vassal, he cried. I don't have the slightest interest in your dirty squabbles between the factions. The Duke added. Ethan told him that the elders who betrayed him were enemies. You should all go to the Arden court, he continued. Zifron was furious. The Baron tried to object. Merlin charged at the Duke. He said he didn't see the point in listening to Ethan. The Duke repelled the head's attack. Merlin believed that he had discovered the secret of capturing Karga. He thought Ethan had bribed Menharten and captured Helmut. Maybe he came here with the same intentions. Merlin asked. You fell into a coma, then woke up, and you still think that the laws of the duchy still apply here, continued the head. Zifron believed that Kargas was not endowed with intelligence. I thought he was getting old and no longer able to keep track of his people, but here is such a specimen. The Baron reasoned. He considered himself completely different. After all, my order is loyal to me. Zifron continued to think. The Baron thought that his faction would never break up. Lawrence did a good job, the Duke reasoned. He was amazed at how much Zifron knew. If the neighboring lands were falsifying information like this, then the rest of them were worthless, Ethan thought to himself. You seem to have sensed your power, Merlin asked. He said that he was annoyed by the Duke's smile. Well, the jokes are over, the head shouted. Merlin activated his technique. The Archduchess was drinking her tea. I don't even know if it's okay for me to sit here and drink tea when Ethan might be in danger, she said. The professor said that there was no point in worrying. He added that the Duke had easily defeated Kargas. Count Romerton may be stronger than Kargas, but this time he rode with knights, he continued. Ethan's sister knew that given his personality, he wouldn't stand by and watch his subordinates fight. After your words, it now seems to me that he can fight alone, the professor added. The knight didn't think the Duke would even get a scratch. He added that Ethan had become much stronger and couldn't be dealt with by the Baron's men. I've tried to fight him, and I can swear it on the honor of a knight, the Archduchess' subordinate. Merlin didn't understand how this could have happened. I was behind him and I was ready to win, he reasoned. Merlin assumed that he was accidentally hit by the Duke's sword. Zifron was trying to call out to the head. Such humiliation in front of my subordinates, what a shame. Merlin kept thinking. The Baron ordered his subordinates to help the head. Back up, everyone. Stop it, he shouted. The head of state said that everything was fine with him. However, Count, I ask for your understanding, Merlin added. He talked about not being able to control his power, so he might kill the Duke. Wow, that wasn't part of my plan, Zifron said. The head prepared to attack. Merlin activated his swift sword summon technique. Die, stop it, he shouted. Because of the chapter's technique, everything was covered in a bright light. The Baron noticed that Merlin's temper was rising a little. He knew that he would spend a lot of money on repairs. It will be necessary to collect taxes again, Zifron added. Merlin reasoned that Ethan had evaded his attack. I can't feel it. He continued to think. Where are you hiding, little rat? The head shouted. He turned his gaze to the back. The Duke kicked him in the face. Merlin flew away from him. He didn't understand how this was possible. I'll tell you one thing, Ethan said. The head was shocked by the Duke's strength. He knew he couldn't move. What do you think happened to the people of Kargas who swung their swords in my face? Ethan asked. Merlin was absolutely terrified. Zifron heard loud noises. He didn't understand what was happening on the battlefield. Sir Merlin, answer me, the Baron shouted. Have you dealt with the Duke? Zifron asked. Subordinates assumed that the head could not answer now. A Merlin was flying towards them. They didn't understand what was going on. Merlin, stop it, shouted the frightened Baron. He couldn't believe his eyes. Zifron asked the deputy what was going on here. Hurry up and say something. Stop it, he shouted. Weren't there 13 knights here? The Count asked. The Baron ordered them to stop the Duke. The deputy ordered the knights not to relax. She ordered everyone to prepare for an attack. Show the techniques that we have practiced. Stop it, the deputy shouted. She instructed the knights to surround the Duke. We will avenge the head, she continued. Ethan thought that the level of the knights was quite low. He knew that he wouldn't have to use the red flame. The deputy commanded the knights to attack the Duke. With such weaklings, you will have to control your strength, the main character reasoned. Ethan braced himself for the attack. Bright flames appeared around the manor. The knights scattered in different directions. The Duke knew that there was no point in killing ordinary knights. There isn't a single one of them that gives off an evil aura, he continued to think. There's only one person who really wants to kill me, Ethan thought. He headed towards Zifron. The deputy was very scared. She was surprised when Ethan walked past her. Not only did you impose excessive taxes and suck all the residents' juices, but you also came at me with a sword to cover up your violation. And this is quite a serious crime. According to the laws of the duchy, from now on you lose your title and all your fortune, Zifron Romerton, Ethan said. The Baron was terrified. He asked his soldiers why they were doing nothing. There are 200 guards here, the Count shouted. He ordered them to attack the Duke immediately. He's nothing like that. Zifron continued. You pathetic worms, the Count added. What am I paying you for? Said an angry Zifron. The Baron mentioned that he was their lord, not the Duke. He asked them to obey his orders. The knights laid down their weapons. They reported that they could not obey such orders. How can we raise the sword against the savior hero? The knight asked. Moreover, our salary is issued to us from the taxes of our family, which you collect in an unfair way. He continued. Zifron didn't know what to do, so all his strange mutterings weren't directed at me, but at them. The Baron thought to himself. He thought the Duke was a terrible man. Does it have military power, and the ability to influence the people? Zifron continued to think. The Count was shocked that no one noticed the Duke's abilities. This is the end, Zifron Romerton. No, Ethan said. The Duke attacked him right through the heart. The Baron cried out in pain. The Count was defeated. Ethan asked the army to listen to him. I want to express my gratitude to you for not raising your sword against me and my family, he said. As you have already heard, before coming here, I visited other cities, the Duke continued. He said that he had promised to put an end to the Baron's despotism. From this very moment on, I, Ethan Arden, take all power from the Baron and announce that from now on, this land will be under the direct control of the duchy as well as gain freedom. Ethan shouted. The knights bowed before the Duke. They said they would wait for his instructions. Glory to the Duke. They shouted. Glory to Arden, added the knights. We are being transferred to the Duke's domain. Ethan praised Lawrence for finding the second part. The counselor asked him if the Baron had told him everything. Yes, we have the king's seal, and considering the case of Helmut, it wasn't difficult, Lawrence was saying. The counselor told the Duke that the Baron was asking for mercy in exchange for any information. Mercy, it already depends on what he says about this book, the Duke said. The advisor did not understand what book he was talking about. Ethan talked about finding it in Romerton's office, and it was called the Sacred Book of Dragons. He asked Lauren to question the Count again. The Duke was very interested in how this book came into Zifron's hands. The Sacred Book of Dragons spoke of praising the dragon god, then he would give strength to those who worships him. Study the scriptures, and may the protection of the dragon god be with you. I knew it, this is a book of mana breathing techniques, the main character reasoned. That dark magician I met in the abandoned mine, according to the description, this is weaker than his techniques. But it says the same breathing techniques here, the Duke continued to think. Ethan noted that the method described in the book has very serious side effects. The technique is mixed with the Dragonman's breathing technique, but instead of a vessel, the mana is collected in the heart. So you can quickly ascend to the level of 4 stars, and as a result, the heart breaks with a fatal outcome. Ethan reasoned. Someone knocked on his office door. The Duke told the man to come in. He asked Lawrence if he had found out anything. Yes, I got information not only from the Baron, but also from ordinary residents, the advisor said. He informed the Duke that the book was related to the order he was talking about. It looks like they were using it to lure people in, Lawrence added. Using the book as bait, exactly. People didn't know about the side effects of this method of breathing, being power mad, so they were easily lured away, as long as they didn't have a dislike for the dragon race, Ethan said. He asked Lawrence what people thought of dragons. He was amazed that people easily believed in this method. The advisor noted that wars primarily harm ordinary people. Even if there was a non-aggression pact, the dragon race has become an object of hatred, he added. Therefore, when this book was first found, there were frequent requests from residents that this order be destroyed, the advisor added. Lawrence said that the aristocrats ignored people's requests, and those who performed a lot even began to disappear. Thus, by their silence, they allowed lawlessness to be created, while the people simply whispered in corners and could do nothing, the advisor continued. Ethan believed that there was a mix of fear and interest on both sides. The Duke had assumed that Zifron had acted alone after what had happened to Kargas. Yes, Zifron on the contrary, as if he was against it, Lawrence replied. I have nothing to do with it, believe me. Oh, said the frightened Count. These pitiful worms, I have nothing to do with this worthless Neuraxis order. The Baron continued. The Duke was interested in this order. Yes, that's what he said, Neuraxis, Lawrence replied. The advisor asked if there was a problem. Ethan told him there was no problem. The main character believed that the one who is able to change his appearance. Neuraxis is the embodiment of lies, he mused. The plot tells us that not all representatives of the dragon race had the same ability. They used their special skills to torture people. Among them, there was one called Shapeshifter. They could take the form of a human, plant, or animal. Ethan found them very annoying. To recognize such a masker, you need to become at least a knight of 7 stars and above, he reasoned. The Duke recalled that even he had to search for Neuraxis for about a year to kill him. There's a non-aggression pact now, but we don't know how many years he's been hiding in the duchy, Ethan thought. After all, the dragon could take the form of an aristocrat. Then the situation may become even more serious than in the previous life, the Duke continued to think. He informed Lawrence that it was an urgent problem. The Duke suggested that the book might have spread on its own. Ethan thought there were people who could have moved her. Ethan was talking about finding out who the carrier was in person. It was night outside. The man said that their place is already closed, so they need to come back next time. But what is it? I say we are closed. Stop it, he shouted. He told them to come back next time. Suddenly, the door shattered into splinters. The man was shocked. The door finally opened, Ethan said. The man asked him what he was doing. The young man said that he would explain everything to him. Ethan went into the other room. People asked him who he was. They added that sales are over for today. Did you want to die? What is it? The stranger asked. Vile merchants who have forgotten their past and sell the power of dragons, and people who are happy to buy it. What a sight, the Duke said. They weren't happy with what Ethan said. He came and interferes with our business, and now something else is blurting out. What is it? The merchant asked. Are you trying so hard to get us to finish you off? Said the angry guy. The man said that they would fulfill his wish. The Duke told them to get out of his way. The stranger called him a buffoon. But we have something to do with you. What do you say to that? Stop it, the man shouted. Ethan was furious. He slapped the man across the face. The Duke added something that he wouldn't tell them twice. He ordered them to leave. The strangers were out of his way. The merchant was very frightened. He asked Ethan who he was. He also asked why he had come and interrupted them. The merchant was telling the Duke that if he didn't leave, he would call security. Are you aware that rioting is a serious crime? He continued. Ethan asked me not to make him laugh, because the merchant was yelling with an impudent expression on his face. How dare you sell a book praising dragons in the territory of the Arden Duchy? The Duke shouted angrily. He added that this kind of activity is a mortal sin. The merchant was shocked by his words. Is he really Duke Ethan? He thought to himself. Ethan told him that if the merchant didn't want to die, he had to tell him where the books were made. The merchant told him that he was only selling them and that they were sent from the order. He added that he didn't know the details. The Duke was sure that there were other places where these books were distributed. Ethan asked the merchant if he knew anything about other places. People from the order check everything very carefully. I don't know if this information is accurate or not, but I heard that there is another point in Viscount Deacon's estate, he said. He was confident that he had decided on his next target. Ethan guessed that this was the place the merchant was talking about. The main character headed there. There is no magic circle with a warning, or even sentries, so they have been doing their business here for a long time and are confident of complete safety, the Duke mused. He was wildly annoyed about it. The man asked him what he had done. He said that he just threatened, and the man immediately pulled out the money. I took them and sent him to the next world, he added. The young man had told him that despite the priest's cover, such things should not be done often. Who's going to tell me what? The man replied. He believed that the order already ruled virtually the entire world. Where is there such an oddball? The man continued. Ethan told him to He continued. The Duke talked about how he was sick of listening to this. Members of the order asked him who he was. The Duke informed them that there was no point in doing so, as they would soon die here. Ethan couldn't believe that people could say such things. Don't you have an ounce of guilt in you? What is it? He asked. I don't remember that visitors were scheduled for today, the guy said. Geezer, don't you get it yet? The man said. He assumed that someone had informed on them, and a mercenary was standing in front of them. The guy was surprised by this. That's good, I was just bored. The order member added. When he saw Ethan, he assumed he was a knight. Well, you asked for it. The man shouted. The Duke realized that this was a person who was using the mixed breathing technique. The main character asked the members of the order if they remembered the war between humans and dragons. The man didn't understand what was being said. Not only did you master the dragon breath technique that killed so many people, but now you're using it to kill innocent people. The Duke shouted, enraged. Ethan pointed out that after this, they didn't have the right to call themselves people. The main character attacked a member of the order. The man thought that the Duke was quite fast, but his attack style was monotonous. He thought he could handle it without any problems. Ethan hovered over him. The Duke broke his sword. The man couldn't believe what had happened. The guy lunged at Ethan. He immediately attacked him. The boy was surprised that the Duke had dodged his punch so easily. The main character attacked from above. He grabbed the boy by the throat. The boy was begging him for mercy. I can't even describe my condition. I'm so disgusted, the Duke said. He told the guy that his father and the whole family sacrificed their lives for people like him. You will pay for your treachery and for the murder of my subjects, Ethan added. He added that absolutely no one will escape punishment. Members of the order reported the location of the enemy. The stranger said that this information should be reported to the priest immediately. He ordered everyone to arm themselves and wait for the invader to appear. Members of the order received information that he broke through the second block. They didn't know who it was. Ethan appeared before them. Everyone prepared to fire. The leader shouted. They ordered the Duke to stand still. The knights of the order added that if they notice something strange, they will immediately open fire. What a bright greeting, said the main character. He was surprised that there was still someone here. I don't think you want to die a painful death, the priest said. He told Ethan that if he answered all his questions, he would take pity on him. Pity me, how ridiculous, the Duke replied. The protagonist asked the priest if he distributed the sacred books of the dragon race. So you knew this was our territory, said the head of the order. Ethan was furious. You worship dragons, the Duke shouted. How dare you say such a thing in Arden territory? He continued. Ethan said he'd crush them. The priest ordered to open fire on the Duke. The head of the order asked the soldiers to leave the invader alive and find out who he was. Ethan started toward the priest. He activated the red flame technique. Mana strike, the Duke shouted. The order members didn't understand what was going on. He loaded the cannon with a mana arrow, said the surprised young man. The priest was shocked that Ethan possessed a sword technique and controlled fire mana. He understood that the main character wasn't an ordinary knight. Wait a minute, fire mana, he thought. Is this the Duke of Arden? The priest continued to think. If this is the same Arden who is known for hating the dragon race, then everything is clear. How could the information be leaked? the head of the order reasoned. The priest thought that this might be a chance for him. He knew that the Duke had just woken up, that he might try to kill him, and that the dragon race would recognize his contribution and reward him. Then I can get the power, the head of the order reasoned. The priest summoned a flaming whip. He ordered it to burn. With such a short spell, he's using powerful magic. Can he really use dragon magic as well? Ethan reasoned. The plot tells us about the magic of dragons. The magic of dragonmen praising dragons with words was special. And the biggest one would be that they could cast magic without special spells. This was possible thanks to the mana pool in their heads, the so-called spiritual ball of words. If he really has this orb, then the order of Neuraxis is not only related to Neuraxis himself changing his appearance, but also to other dragon races. The main character reasoned. The Duke prepared to attack. The priest said he'd cornered Ethan. He ordered the soldiers to go on the attack. The Duke knew that the priest was much stronger than the dark mage he had met before. He needed to be dealt with in one blow, Ethan reasoned. You think I'm giving you time to cast a spell? The priest said. He used the fire shackle technique. The main character was trapped. You're caught, the head of the order shouted. He told Ethan that if he kept twitching, his arms and legs would be torn off. You're finished, Duke, the priest shouted. What a weirdo. Yes, said the head of the Arden family. With a single blow, he destroyed the priest's technique. The head of the order was shocked. The Duke was telling the priest that he had been slow to think. The Arden clan has one special feature. We are able to control fire mana, so your pathetic techniques don't affect me, Ethan added. You filthy pup, I knew it would be difficult to deal with you, but I didn't think it would be this difficult, the priest added. The head of the order told the Duke not to even hope for a peaceful death. I'll show you the real hell. The priest activated the cloud giant technique. His sinister aura filled the room. Strong aura, if he gathers all the power in it, I might be in trouble. The Duke mused. Do you think I'll let you stop me? The priest shouted. He'd told Ethan he couldn't get through. The main character understood that there were quite a lot of warriors left. The head of the order was bleeding from his mouth. Look, this is the power they gave me, he said. The priest told Ethan that if he was confident, then let him try to stop him with his abilities. Die, he shouted, and the Duke knew it was too late. He was thinking that he didn't want to use this method until the last moment. The main character activated all the mana streams on his body. He activated the double ring technique. The priest didn't understand what was happening. The head of the order screamed in pain. Ethan activated the black flame breath. The main character attacked him. Priest and Ethan's mana collided in battle. The Duke's mana emitted a bright flame. It can't be that he summoned such a powerful magic with pure power. The head of the order reasoned. The priest was taken aback. Shouts echoed everywhere. The building was destroyed. Fragments of it were scattered all over the area. The order's soldiers were defeated. Ethan was heading for the barely alive priest. I want to ask you something, the Duke said. The head of the order had a bad cough. Do you know about the group of mages that are part of the order? Ethan asked. The priest began to laugh. He continued to laugh nonstop. Do you want to demonstrate your superiority as a winner? The priest said. He noted that Ethan was definitely an Arden ancestor. The main character said that he did not intend to chat with him in vain. He ordered me to answer his question. There is such a group, of course, but you will never be able to find out about it in your life, the priest added. Glory to the great master, the head of the order shouted. He told the Duke that he would go with him to the next world. Ethan placed a seal on the priest. The head of the order cried out in pain. But how? I've seen people try to do the same thing before, so I drained all the blood magic before blowing myself up, he mused. The head of the order added that even with such power, he would not succeed. No one from the order will give you an answer, because we have all sworn an oath to our Lord, the priest said. The Duke suggested that it was like the burning magic divulging the secret of information. The magic is quite high level. My skills aren't enough to undo it. Most likely it was cast by someone who will be higher than the ordinary priest. His last words. We will need to find out more about him, Ethan thought to himself. Laughter could be heard from the Earl's estate. That Lugon made a himself, said a satisfied Shimon. He praised Hans for his efforts. The subordinate said that he was exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating at all. You're doing great. The Baron continued. He added that it was thanks to Hans' information that Lugon was unable to send help. Most likely, he will find out about it tomorrow, Shimon added. Hans was very happy to be of use to him. But capturing the castle with the forces that the Duke had was not so easy. Maybe he used some special method. What is it? He asked. The Count noted that everything was obvious. Before that, he won over the Order of Kargas, didn't he? The Baron asked. He said that they were the ones that Dookie used to attack in the middle of the night. So this Romerton was on the level of some order, Shimon continued. Hans was shocked that the Baron could be so deluded, thinking that the Order's commander was only at the 4-star level. He'll soon start saying that Lawrence has magical powers, too. Ethan's subordinate reason. Shimon called Hans. The Count informed him that he had made a huge contribution to this matter, so he would reward him with a status. I'm appointing you head of county intelligence, Shimon said. Head of intelligence, isn't this too much of a responsibility for me? Ethan's subordinate asked. The Count remarked that Hans deserved it, saying that he would give him nights to let him know what the Duke was up to. So, can you do it? Shimon asked. Hans said he would do his best for him. The Count asked him for a favor. Now Lugon will have no choice but to fight the Duke, the Count reasoned. As planned, I will put pressure on everyone at once and his factions will pass to me, Shimon continued to think. He couldn't wait to hear what Lugon would say at the elders' meeting. We found ourselves in the Duke's manor. Lawrence asked him how it went. Yes, although not much. We managed to harvest a small crop, Ethan replied. The Duke asked the counselor if he had been able to get the information. Lawrence informed him that he was able to get some information about the Order of Neuraxis. First, the Order of Neuraxis operates as an official organization, mainly in the Xeno Empire, the advisor said. Ethan was shocked by this information. What did you say? He asked. Herzog specify whether this information is correct. Lawrence said that's what the official materials say. I myself found out recently when I checked the situation in other lands, the advisor added. The main character didn't understand what was going on. The Xeno Empire was also attacked by the dragon race, so it's not enough for them to have a peace agreement, so they now recognize Neuraxis as an official organization. He reasoned. Ethan was angry at the fact that the scale went beyond the duchy. He ordered Lawrence to summon Phyrexian. The Duke thought he knew a lot more than they did. The plot tells us that the Order of Neuraxis is currently considered a sacred land of the Xenoi Empire, with a temple in the center. In addition to Hydern, there are branches in 6 other kingdoms. The main leader of the order is called the Holy Master, and each branch is headed by the so-called Great Rulers. Ethan was angry. If it's as you say, Phyrexian, then they have the most powerful figures in the western mainland in their hands. And there are probably branches of them in Hydern that I just don't know about yet, the main character said. He was almost certain of it, because the priest had mentioned a certain lord. Ethan said that from that moment on, he had another goal. This is the rebirth of the bloodline, and the extermination of the orders and the dragon race that has spread throughout the kingdom. The Duke added. Phyrexian was glad of the fact that there weren't many hidden orders in Hydern due to their king's policies. You mean that incompetent king? Ethan asked. Phyrexian knew it was hard to believe, but it was true. His Majesty was very active in opposing the order, so only in Hydern there is no official branch, he added. The Duke was surprised that King Hydern had prevented the dragon race from entering his kingdom. I thought he was just an incompetent ruler who was always looking around at the opinions of the 7 great nations, Ethan reasoned. In fact, it turned out that he always defended the people, maybe in the case of Arden. He had no other choice because of obligations. The Duke continued to think. He asked Phyrexian to report on the king's policies. Who knows, we might need it, Ethan added. Phyrexian said he would follow his orders. Also, the Duke asked him to inquire about the subject. Phyrexian added that it looked like a breastplate. Ethan had told him that the priest had carried the sign. He assumed that this sign might be related to a group of magicians. And then there's Lawrence, the Duke continued. He asked her to send a letter on her first birthday, as soon as possible, when dawn came. You mean that blacksmith? The advisor asked. Do you need a weapon urgently? Lawrence added. The Duke said it was a more important request. This is just my guess so far. The order may involve not only humans, but also dwarves, the Duke added. The street was filled with the hum of a crowd. Pofforin dropped his hammer. He was shocked when he read the Duke's letter. Muster asked him if everything was all right. The dwarf asked him to keep an eye on the forge. Pofforence was talking about going to see Ethan right away. Muster didn't understand what was going on. Perhaps the chance for revenge will come sooner than I thought, he added. There is a magic ball in front of us. Well, let's start the 33rd meeting of the elders, Shimon said. Naturally, the first point of discussion will be the Duke's takeover of Baron Romerton's estate, he continued. The Count added that the head of the Lugon faction was the last to know about this. Lugon was angry. The head is so incompetent that the Duke doesn't think much of you. He dared to attack, didn't he? Continued Shimon. He asked Lugon what he was going to do. Or will you continue to watch from the sidelines until all your people are killed? The Count asked. I thought this Duke had a grudge against Shimon, which is why he dealt with Kargas. But it turns out that he just started with those who look weaker. However, it's too strange that only I found out about this situation later than everyone else. Lugon reasoned. He believed that someone was helping Shimon. Wait a minute, Shimon is in cahoots with the Duke, the Count mused. Lugon suggested sending a warning letter. The Count was taken aback. Because of the vassalage treaty, we can't attack the Duke, Lugon said. He noted that they can use their rights and send a warning to the Duke to stop their attacks. Let's see who's helping you, Lugon thought. Also, the Count offered to inform the king about the current events. Shimon thought Lugon was very short-sighted. It looks like you haven't figured it out yet, the Baron thought. He assumed that an angry Duke couldn't be stopped by a piece of paper. It would be nice if they collided, Shimon mused. The Baron hoped that at that moment, he would take this chance and destroy everyone with the help of his knights. The Baron informed Hans that he might come in. The subordinate asked if their meeting was over. Yes, I've got this Lugon in a dead end, the Count replied. He thought that if the Duke was attacking Viscount Lidon, it would be perfect for him. Shimon asked Hans if he had found out the Duke's next target. So far I haven't been able to. According to my observations, the Duke attacks those areas where too high taxes are imposed, the subordinate said. He suggested that Shimon cut taxes to distract Ethan's attention. Shimon was furious. Hans was taken aback. Hans, aren't you taking it too far? The Count asked. The subordinate didn't understand what was going on. Your job is to keep an eye on the Duke. How dare you tell me to be quiet in front of him so as not to attract attention? Yes, said the Baron. Hans immediately apologized to him. The Count told him not to forget his basic duties. You know what will happen to you if you don't make it, right? Shimon added. He added that if the state tax service understood everything, then it can go. The subordinate apologized to him again. The Baron knew it wasn't all that simple. It seems that Lugon guessed that someone was helping me. The best way to deal with both the Duke and Lugon at once is to make the third Duke the head of the family, Shimon reasoned. The plot takes us a few days ahead, to the training field of Romerton Castle. The Duke read the letter. A warning letter, so it looks like my plan worked out, Ethan said. Both factions probably think that I'm going to attack the West, the main character continued. Lawrence asked him if he was going to attack Shimon's faction. On the contrary. Ethan thought about it. Lugo is hiding behind the king. Maybe we can use him for our own purposes, the Duke added. He asked the advisor what he thought about it. Lawrence thought that was a good way to do it. The research of Viscount Decon's sacred dragon book that the merchant was talking about has already ended. The Duke asked. The advisor informed him that he had stopped all distribution channels for books. Great, now our priority is to follow the king's policy, which means protecting the dragon race and punishing the Council of Elders, he added. As I expected, he hinted to Shimon about tax cuts, but Shimon ignored him, Lawrence said. Ethan was amazed at his greed. They are well aware that the meeting of elders is waiting for punishment, but they still stand their ground, the Duke continued. Funny things you say, you little thief who stole everything that was mine from me, the stranger said. Ethan stiffened. He blocked the stranger's attack. The entire area was covered in bright flames. The Duke didn't know who it could be. This place is strictly guarded, he continued to think. How hot, the stranger said. So this is the ardent flame that is being talked about so much, she continued. Lawrence was shocked that the Duke's attack didn't work. The advisor knew that this was no ordinary warrior. Who are you? Ethan asked. You're too brazen for a thief, she said. The woman said that she was the owner of the potion that the Duke stole from her. A thief, you say? Ethan asked. He asked her, isn't that a bit harsh for someone who broke into someone else's castle? The Duke continued. He asked the woman again who she was. The woman told him not to make her laugh. Who are you calling rude, little thief? She said. The Duke realized who the woman was. Let's see what you say to that. The woman shouted. The main character remembered that it was a potion that he had told Jaron about. The plot tells us about a special potion, life force essence, a lightning stone, a metal mana charger. Thanks to these 4 items, which were extremely effective, in the past life, humanity was able to resist the dragon race. And the one who invented them was the craft mage, Ilya Fiskcraft. Ethan reasoned. Ilya broke the potion flask. She told me that she invented this potion after 5 years of research. I haven't been outside for 10 years, and you've never made a mistake, and you were able to repeat it right away, said a surprised Fiskcraft. There's nothing to think about here, Ilya added. She asked the Duke how he managed to steal the recipe for her potion. To be honest, even your comments are amazing, she added. Ethan didn't know where she'd come from. He supposed she might be Ilya, but he wasn't entirely sure. Perhaps history could have changed, as it did with Lawrence, the Duke mused. He saw fit to check it out. What are these absurd accusations? The main character asked. If you were going to accuse me, you could start by showing yourself in your true form, he added. The Duke thought that judging from his past life, this was the surest way. He informed her not to underestimate the Arden family. Ethan told Ilya that he immediately understood her trick. Fiskcraft considered. She noted that he had good eyesight. I'll admit that you're unusual, Ilya added. She appeared before them in her true form. It's been a while since I showed my true form, Fiskcraft said. Lawrence asked the Duke if the faces were real. He supposed it was. Almost an honor, pup, she added. Now, you'd better answer my question. I won't be able to take it anymore either, Ilya was saying. It seems that this is indeed Ilya, the Duke reasoned. He was surprised to see her face for the first time, as it hadn't happened in his previous life. This is a hermit mage who never shows off his identity in front of others, the Duke mused. He knew he couldn't pass up this chance. All right, let's try to take her on a fishing line, Ethan kept thinking. Ilya asked the Duke why he didn't say anything. If you're up to something, a potion that allows you to use the monster's ability, Fiskcraft continued. A metamorphosis stone with mana properties, Ethan had said. He told her about a bead that reduces the entire size of the wearer. An invisibility cloak that hides even sounds, the Duke continued. A crystal ball that shows up to 1,000 years ahead, he added. Ilya asked him to stop. She didn't understand what was going on. These are all subjects that I have researched and even those that are still in the project, Fiskcraft reasoned. She knew there was no way Ethan could have stolen them. Ilya didn't understand how he knew about them. How do you know? The hermit mage asked. Nothing special, it's a vision of our Arden bloodline, the Duke replied. Ethan noted that there are many others besides them, but he can't tell the details to an outsider. I can't listen to this anymore. Do you want me to believe it? Ilya shouted. You're not even magicians or alchemists, and you're talking about the vision of swordsmen. Fiskcraft continued. Ethan had told her that she might not believe him. She was shocked. You trespass on someone else's territory, and unfairly accuse me of stealing. But instead of punishing me, I answered your question honestly, the Duke said. The knights were taken aback when they found out that someone had entered the territory. You didn't thank me, and now you want me to worry whether you believe me or not, Ethan added. Fiskcraft was furious. She was sure they were lying to her. The Duke decided that after her request, she should leave. I demolished the training field myself, so I won't charge for the damage, he said. What a miserable worm, thought Ilya to herself. Ethan sensed something amiss behind him. Mana began to transform around Fiskcraft. Some puppy. Stop it, she shouted. How dare you lies, Ilya added. She told Ethan that she would teach him a lesson. Lawrence didn't understand what was going on. This is a domain, the Duke thought. The story tells us that those who have reached the highest level in mana control can change the area around them. In the world, this is called the caster's domain. Ethan realized that he had forgotten all about this technique. He was reminded of the fact that in her previous life, Ilya was an 8th level Grand Mage. She decided to act decisively. He reasoned, can't you move, you pathetic worms? Fiskcraft screamed. The Duke knew that they might suffer because of this. He activated his power. His fire mana appeared around Ethan's body. Ilya couldn't believe her eyes. Don't do anything unnecessary. Stop it, she shouted. Fiskcraft was amazed at the Duke's speed. She activated the shield that prevented his attack. Ilya was shocked that the main character was able to break her domain. Who is he? She reasoned. Fiskcraft activated the offensive and defensive technique. He couldn't break through her shield. He was struck by Ilya's technique. He was thrown a little to the side. The Duke knew that the damage was too much. It's still a work in progress, but he continued to think. Ethan activated a mysterious technique. Fiskcraft was taken aback when she realized that the Duke's energy had increased. Could it be him? The hermit mage continued to think. The Duke activated the sultry spear technique. There was an explosion on the training ground. Menharton asked the knights to be careful not to be hit by the explosion. The remnants of Ilya's shield flew in all directions. Ethan held the sword to her face. He told her that if she moved, the sword would pierce her. Fiskcraft was baffled. She didn't understand what was going on. He just used the dragon breathing technique. Is he really in league with the dragon race? Ilya reasoned. No, the Duke might have stolen their equipment, but he wasn't the type to go along with them. Fiskcraft continued to think. She asked the Duke how he knew she was a doppelganger. Ilya assumed Ethan wasn't going to fight anymore. Just because we are a clan of famous swordsmen doesn't mean that we can only swing our swords, the main character said. He told Ilya that they were familiar with potions, as well as techniques that could be useful in battle. Your identity was revealed by one of our ability, he added, hoping that this answer from Fiskcraft was enough to dispel any remaining doubts. We don't need to ruin everything here anymore, Ethan added. Lawrence asked him what they should do about the fact that Ilya had attacked the manor. It was due to a misunderstanding, so we'll forgive her, he said. The Duke asked her to put everything in order. Suddenly, Ethan clutched at his heart. He knew that it was very dangerous. A technique using the dragon race's breath. Without it, I wouldn't be able to do anything against it, the Duke reasoned. He was glad for the fact that he had mastered it without any side effects. Ilya asked them to stop. You're fighting a war with your relatives, aren't you? Fiskcraft asked. She said that she would help him with this. But in return, you will tell me, she continued. Ethan said there was no need. Ilya was shocked by this. I said I don't need your help, the Duke replied. Ethan thought he was strong enough to win. I'm a rank 8 archmage, Fisgraf screamed. And you're just some 4-star knight, Ilya continued. The Duke noted that despite this, he defeated her. Ilya was angry. Those items you mentioned, I can make not only those, but also a bunch of others. How do you like it? Fisgraf asked. She froze, waiting for an answer. Surely he will think about it, because there is no master in the world better than me. The hermit mage reasoned. I'll pretend I want to help him and crush that vision of Arden or whatever it is. Ilya kept thinking. Ethan agreed with her. If that's what you want, then I'll check if your abilities are useful to me or not, the main character said. He asked Lawrence to prepare a room for Fisgraf. Ilya thought that the Duke had fallen for her trap, just as she had planned. The counselor showed Fisgraf to her room. Not exactly to my taste, but it's okay to live, the hermit mage replied. Lawrence informed her that if anything was needed, Ilya activated the interdimensional pocket technique. All the necessary potions appeared in her room at the same time. Don't worry, it's all there, Fisgraf added. The Duke easily defeated her, so I even forgot that she really is an archmage, the advisor reasoned. Ilya finished preparing her room. Now it's habitable, said the hermit mage. Lawrence was amazed at exactly where all of her belongings were stored. Look, aren't you Lawrence? Ilya asked. You probably know a lot about the Duke, Fisgraf continued. She wanted to ask the counselor something about Ethan. Oh, I've only recently met him myself, so I don't know much yet, Lawrence said. He thought that if Ilya wanted to find out something about the Duke, she should meet with the lady. You mean his sister? What is it? She asked. Lawrence said it was true. Okay, can we go back to being an old woman? Ilya was saying. She asked Lawrence to bring her to Ethan's sister. The advisor asked her to wait. I've heard that many doppelgangers can take different forms. Usually you took the image of an elderly woman. Lawrence asked. Exactly, because that's how people showed respect for my age, even though I'm a half doppelganger, Fisgraf added. Lawrence told Ilya that there was a war going on with the Duke's relatives, and we used different data to misinform our opponents, the advisor added. Lawrence had told her that if Ilya remained as a young girl, no one would suspect her of cheating. How about we stay like this for a while? The advisor asked. Fisgraf noted that his words made sense. And you dressed up as a man for the same reason? Ilya asked. Lawrence was shocked that she realized this. Okay, then I'll go see Mrs. Tuck, Fisgraf said. She asked Lawrence to bring her to her as soon as possible. Nice to meet you, Miss Ilya. Yes, said the Archduchess. You're so young and traveling alone. Ethan's sister asked. The Archduchess has informed us that Ilya will be looked after. Do you even know how old I am? Fisgraf shouted. The counselor asked Ethan's sister to look after Ilya. So you tricked me, you sneaky one. The hermit mage said. I'll deal with you later. Stop it, she shouted. The Duke was glad that Poference had come to see him. Even faster than I thought, Ethan added. How could I be late when I was summoned by the Duke himself? The dwarf asked. Besides, I couldn't sit still when I saw this sign. Poference continued. He asked the Duke if he would mind if he took a look at it right now. There are drops of blood on it. Do you recognize it? Ethan asked. The dwarf considered. He turned his attention to the pattern that was depicted on the weapon. It's exactly the same pattern here, Poference said. He said he was sure of it. It's definitely his hand, the hand of the royal blacksmith Williams, the dwarf was saying. He was shocked that Williams was in cahoots with the dragon race. Even among dwarves, this is considered treason, cried Poference. The war with the dragons was also devastating for the dwarves, he said. They lived without certain rules and systems, so they were easy prey for the dragon race, Poference continued. When the invasion began, small villages were unable to respond to the enemy's attacks, and dwarven settlements began to disappear one by one, he added. As a result, many of them died and their villages were completely destroyed, Poference said. If it weren't for Arden, now, thanks to King Murati, who founded the country, the dwarf continued. Ethan was taken aback by his words. Poference asked the Duke if he was all right. It's amazing that the dwarves founded a state, but wasn't Muratni the ruler? The main character asked. The plot takes us to the memories of Apophornets. The city was covered in bright flames. The dwarf was trying to bring his child back to consciousness. The dwarf closed the eyes of the child who had left that light. Dear relatives, listen to my words, he said. We managed to avoid a dangerous moment thanks to Duke Aradin's help, but I can't guarantee that such a danger won't come knocking on our door again. The dwarf was saying. He said that they should cope together with this disaster. All dwarves must become one. So the dwarves and humans united under a single flag and created a kingdom, Poference said. And Muradni, who personally met with each of the 12 clans and made a huge contribution to the unification, became the first dwarf king. He added. Poference told Ethan that all this happened while Ethan was unconscious. It's very unexpected that he became king. But on the other hand, it means that everything is fine with him, the Duke reasoned. Poference had said that some dwarves still went out into the human world to trade and spend some of their income building the kingdom. Let them say that we are only interested in money, but for the sake of my people, I am ready to endure this, he added. Ethan noted that Marathi had also helped his family in the past. I don't know if this will help him, but our Arden clan will also contribute to the restoration of the Dwarven kingdom, the Duke said. Poference informed the Duke that if he needed his help, he could apply at any time. We already owe a lot to the former Duke of Arden. Thank you more, but what will you do with Williams, said Poference. The Duke noted that William's behavior goes against the policy of the Dwarven kingdom. And Hyder. He may be a court blacksmith, but he's behaving inappropriately, Ethan added. You mean there's someone bigger behind it? Poference asked. The Duke suggested that there was a power behind him that even the king couldn't handle. Ethan thought it would be a challenge. If you thoughtlessly charge Williams, they will counterattack, the Duke said. Poference was infuriated by the fact that the rest of the dwarves were doing their best for the kingdom when Williams was working for their worst enemy. Ethan asked Dwarfer to listen to him. Don't you want to play big? What is it? He asked. Poference didn't understand what the Duke was talking about. Revenge and lost glory, as well as sacrifice for the sake of their people, the main character said. Ethan thought there was a way to do it all at once. The Duke said he would make Poference a court blacksmith. The dwarf couldn't believe what he was saying. I'm going to do it, if only you agree, he added. Poference thanked him, but noted that he didn't quite understand the point. No one believed me, so why did you believe in me so much? The dwarf asked, puzzled. Is it really so strange to trust someone with whom I have the same enemy? Yes, the Duke replied. Ethan informed Poference that he was his man. Do you need any reason to trust your people? Continued the main character. Poference noted that he had asked a question. He promised the Duke that he would do everything for him. I swear on my hammer, he added. The dwarf had spoken of dedicating his hammer and loyalty to the Duke. Great, I accept your vow with gratitude, Ethan said. The Duke greeted Bloaton. The Marquis said he was glad to see him. I think this is the first time we've talked like this, he said. Bloaton asked the Duke to address him in a way that was convenient for him. Okay, then I'll call you Marquis, Ethan said. The main character noted the fact that he did not thank Bloaton for the elixir, although he gave him such a gift. No, I'm only too happy if you've found my gift useful, the Marquis said. He was talking about Ethan accepting him as a sign of friendship. I don't think you contacted me personally just for a gift, the Marquess added. He asked the Duke, did something important happen to you? Yes, this may be a bit unexpected. But the court blacksmith of Hydern is related to the dragon race, Ethan was saying. He assumed that someone powerful was behind it. Bloaton considered. He felt that this was a really unexpected and very serious problem. The Marquis asked the Duke if he had a plan. I know a dwarf who far surpasses the current one in his ability, Ethan said. He asked Bloaton if he could make him the new court blacksmith. Ilya entered the room. Now my abilities will come in handy, reported Happy Fiskafat. In the last week, not only did she learn about the Duke's secret, but she was also constantly under the care of the princess, she reasoned. Ilya was glad that she had the chance to demonstrate her abilities. Since everyone is here, let's get started, the Duke said. He showed everyone a gift from Bloaton. The Duke informed them that he wanted to make artifacts out of the armor. He asked if it was possible. Duke, if you're talking about artifacts, Poference said. The plot tells us about the artifacts of alchemy. High technology, in which a magic scheme is embedded in armor and weapons. With it, even an ordinary knight can activate magic. This is equipment made from the highest quality mithril, the dwarf was saying. He thought that creating such a thing was not an easy task. My skill is enough to put in a magic chain. But it requires a skilled mage as an assistant, he continued. Why are you staring at me with such a cheeky look? Ilya asked indignantly. She was talking about being a top-class magician. And what does assistant mean? Fisgraf screamed. She was talking about how exactly Poference would do as she said. Duke, do I have to work together with this girl? The dwarf asked. Ethan noted the fact that he could vouch for her abilities. Despite her appearance, she is an 8th rank archmage, he added. Ethan added that this is a good chance to demonstrate your skills. In order to achieve a good result, you should not quarrel, the Duke added. He said that he expected a lot from this armor. Poference agreed with him. If this is your order, despite all its shortcomings, I will try harder to make a better artifact, Poference said. Ilya told the Duke not to listen to him. I will put fantastic magic into them, said Fisgraft. And as soon as you are shocked by my ability, I will reveal the secret of the Ardents, mused Ilya. The action takes place in Poference's workshop. The dwarf worked hard on the Duke's armor. Ethan asked the guys about the process of creating artifacts. Ilya greeted him. I don't have to check how it works, said the Duke. Fisgraf said that Poference turned out to be a very capable dwarf. Without unnecessary movements, it cuts out only what is needed, she continued. Ethan examined his weapon. A bright red flame emanated from his sword. Poference awaited his assessment. The Duke swung his sword. The main character was glad that the sword turned out to be quite light. He reasoned that his weapon was not heavy before, but now it became like a feather. Ilya asked Ethan how he felt about the result. You probably felt yourself when you used mana that more than one spell was put into it, said the proud hermit mage. Fisgraf told the Duke that in addition to the spell that reduces weight, she cast sharpness magic on the sword. I also added the function of magically repairing and keeping the sword clean, added Ilya. She also noted that she cast magic on her gloves and knee armor, which increases mana compatibility like Ephraim. The Duke was surprised by the end result. Even with just one of all the listed functions, it could already be considered a real masterpiece, he reasoned. Ethan was shocked that Ilya had put so many spells into one thing. The Duke continued his thoughts. If this dwarf had been more capable, I would have been able to create something better, Fisgraft said. Poference was angry after her words. The main character understood that if he allowed Ilya to continue to behave like this, then it would be difficult to cope with her. Is that all? Asked the Duke. The hermit mage was taken aback. She said that all this was just the beginning, and now she would show the Duke real magic. Ilya asked Ethan to put mana into all the items at the same time. All at the same time, he asked. Fisgraft told him to do it with his fire mana. It will be too much for such a weapon. But this is the only way we can check whether it can withstand it, said the hermit mage. The Duke decided to try. A powerful aura of his mana spread throughout the workshop. Poference was shocked. He only recently received a sword from Ephraim. But during this time his skill has grown, the dwarf reflected. The Duke noted that nothing happened. Ilya told him to invest another mana. There is something that you used during the battle with me. Fisgraf continued. She talked about Ethan not worrying about the weapon and putting all his mana into it. The Duke understood what was being said, and then began. He used the 8-ring technique. The workshop was once again enveloped in a fiery aura. Due to the strong surge of mana, the window broke into small pieces. All the furniture flew in different directions. The guys watched all this. A fiery aura emanated from the weapon. Ethan finished the process of investing mana. His artifacts glowed red. The Duke was shocked by the result. This is the so-called high thermal conductivity technique that I invented, Ilya said. You can distribute some of the heat of the gear and also collect it in just one place. Fisgraf continued. She noted the fact that the Duke was able to withstand twice the heat. Ilya asked how Ethan could evaluate the result. Hurry up and share your impressions of my abilities, added the pleased hermit magician. The Duke was extremely pleased with the result. Nothing special, just pretending to be, Poference said. What did you say? Fisgraf screamed. Ethan was amazed at how powerful Ilya's magic was. But I can't just make her the main one. He continued to think. The Duke told Fisgraf that the result was not bad. The hermit magician was shocked by his answer. And that's all, said the indignant Ilya. Ethan praised Poference for the job he did. Fisgraf was greatly indignant. This dwarf is a mediocrity. Because of him the effect turned out to be weaker than it should be. Ilya shouted. The dwarf was furious. You just praised me, he said. Ethan asked them to stop. The Duke announced that he had accepted a lieu. I'll tell you about Arden's vision. Can you continue to help me? Asked the Duke. Fisgraft was happy about this. She noted that Ethan had to keep his promise. The Duke told Lawrence that Poference had gone to the capital with the letter. Within 3 days he will get there and meet the Marquis Bloten, he continued. The Duke asked him how things were going with the king. Ethan's subordinate told him that they had completed all the preparatory work anonymously. The review will begin before the meeting with the ruler, Lawrence added. The Duke praised him. He believed that almost everything was ready. In front of Ethan stood his army. 40 knights from the Order of Arden are ready to leave, Menharten reported. One of the knights blew his horn. The gate began to rise. Ethan informed the knights that they were moving out. The Duke's face was full of determination. The knights of a foreign kingdom reported that someone was coming in their direction. What other army? Said the enraged commander. He didn't understand where they came from. The commander asked the knight if he could find out their location. This is Arden, he said. This is Arden, shouted the knight. The Duke's army stood on the threshold into the city. Menharten informed the guards that Duke Arden was coming to see them. Viscount Lithan will be responsible for levying too many taxes and exceeding his authority, as well as for distributing books of the dragon race in the lands of Arden, said the head of the knights. He ordered the guards to open the gate. There are more than 30 knights there, reasoned the commander. He asked them to wait. The head of the knights said that before opening them, a certain order must be followed. Have you contacted the Viscount? Asked the commander. The knight informed him that this had not happened yet. He asked him to hurry up. The Duke launched an attack on the kingdom. A loud explosion was heard throughout the area. The guards scattered in different directions. The Viscount did not understand what was happening. The knights tried to clear their throats. The guard told the count that they were in trouble. "The Grand Duke is here, he said. The commander ordered the soldiers to take positions. He gave the order for Ethan to attack. Everyone immediately take their positions and attack. The head shouted. He ordered the soldiers to unsheath their swords. "We can take it if we unite," continued the commander-in-chief. The Duke thought that the knights did not have an ominous aura. Ethan assumed that the soldiers raised their swords because of an order. "The fastest way is to weaken their morale," the main character continued to think. The Duke activated the 8 rings technique. Ethan concentrated his sphere. The commander did not understand what was happening. The soldiers were shocked. This is it. Did he really use the sphere spell? He reasoned. The Duke began to move towards them. The soldiers were affected by his technique. Their weapons fell from their hands. Ethan continued to walk towards the commander-in-chief. The knights did not understand what was happening on the tower. The commander could not believe his eyes. So that I, a knight of 5 stars, would fall under the pressure of the sphere. He continued to think. The head of the knights attacked the Duke. The main character activated a flow of mana on his hand. Ethan blocked the commander-in-chief's attack. The Duke was pleased with the result. The commander was shocked. Ethan grabbed the commander's face. The Duke slammed him into the ground with his blow. The main character froze in anticipation of further actions. He asked the knights to listen to him. "I do not fight those who do not feel hostility towards me," said the Duke. Ethan told them that he had come to punish the count, not them. The Duke told the army that he was the true owner of these lands, and then ordered the gates to be open. The flag fluttered against the background of the bright sun. Shimon did not understand what the count was talking about. Lugon told him that the Duke had passed all the surroundings and was heading straight to the kingdom. "Didn't you say that his abilities are at the level of 2 or 3 stars? Continued the indignant count. He told Shimon that the Duke defeated his commander, whose level was 5 stars. The Baron asked him to tell him more about this. Lugon mentioned the fact that through the crystal ball he saw Ethan swoop down from above, and then the connection was cut off. "Where has it been seen that a 2-star level knight could make such a jump in the air?" Lugon added. Shimon asked to repeat his words. The Baron thought about it. He asked Lugon to calm down because the information about the low mana level was reliable. Shimon asked him if he knew why the Duke broke into the fortress. The Count informed him that the reason for the break-in was a tax problem and a dragon book. Shimon asked him to hold out as long as possible, because he would soon send him help. Lugon said that he did not know how long they could hold out. He asked Shimon to hurry up. The Baron was amazed that the Duke's abilities were different from his information. He thought that something was wrong here, and that everything seemed to be getting out of control. Or did something happen that I couldn't even imagine? The Baron continued to think. Shimon thought that he needed time. He remembered Lugon's words, where he spoke about taxes and books. Shimon believed that his initial goal was to distract the Duke with Lugon. "Even if I have to give up something," he reasoned. Commander Lovern entered his room. The commander-in-chief asked whether the Count had called him. Shimon told him that the Duke had attacked the Knights of Loken. He ordered Lovern to send several reinforcements there. The commander accepted his order. Baron noted that with all this there is one condition. Shimon asked the army to march slowly to avoid a collision with the Duke. Lovern told him that he would do everything as he ordered him. We again watched the flag fluttering under the scorching sun. Lawrence praised the Duke for his good work. He was amazed at how quickly Ethan figured it out. Ethan told him that there was nothing wrong with this. "I just opened the outer gate," the Duke added. Ethan assumed that the main forces were inside the castle along with the Viscount. He asked the advisor if everything was going according to plan. Lawrence informed the Duke that everything was in progress. "You can start retreating," the advisor added. Ethan turned to Manhwa. The Duke asked him to leave a few soldiers here to oversee the guards and reorganize the forces. "Follow me with them," Ethan added. Manhwa obeyed his orders. The Duke climbed onto his horse. He ordered the army to enter. "Hey everyone," the man shouted. "Did you hear?" he added. The man informed the residents that Archduke Arden had arrived to put an end to Loken's tyranny. "The time has come for the great hero to draw his sword to protect us," he continued. Residents supported him. The young man said that he could no longer bear hunger. "Me too," the guy screamed. He invited everyone to go to the Archduke. The people headed towards him. "To the Archduke," the man shouted. Ethan was surprised by the number of people that had gathered in such a short time. "We just fanned the flames," the advisor added. Lawrence told him that the townspeople had many complaints. Ethan's advisor noted that news about the Duke spread without his participation. "They said that Kargas and Lytton lived in luxury, like in the old days," Lawrence continued. The man turned his attention to the Duke. He was glad that the Archduke was here. He and the villagers greeted Ethan. "Is this the Archduke?" said the stranger. Ethan appeared before the people. "Citizens of Demorian, your city used to resemble paradise," said the Duke. The Duke noted that after the war, the vassals did not follow the will of their masters and made them suffer. Ethan said that for this reason he would punish Viscount Loken. The Duke added that he himself would govern this city. He ordered the knights to draw their swords. Residents began to rejoice. "Long live Arden!" The crowd shouted. "Hooray for Archduke Ethan!" They continued. The sun was setting. The knight asked if he had heard the news. "Apparently, Archduke Arden has captured the outer part of the castle," he said. "From what I heard, he has already captured 2 territories," the knight continued. The young man asked if this was the reason they were on alert. The young man did not understand how the Duke did this, given that he had recently emerged from a coma. Suddenly, the knight saw something. The young man asked him what he saw. "Those people," answered the knight. He talked about seeing the townspeople. The commander ordered the soldiers not to panic and to remain in place. The commander-in-chief asked the messengers to report everything to the Viscount. The Viscount was shocked that the Archduke and the townspeople were attacking him. He didn't understand what was happening. Civilians suddenly rebelled. The Viscount reasoned. The commander asked the soldiers not to panic because there were rebels in front of them. He ordered them to set fire to the arrows. One of the knights wanted to object to him. "Are you not obeying the order?" the commander-in-chief cried. He gave the order to open fire. The knight told him that he could not do this because his family was there. The commander told the knight that he would kill him if he did not obey. Ethan was furious. He ordered the commander to stop this immediately. The soldiers covered their ears due to the strong scream that was accompanied by the Duke's technique. They asked the Duke to stop. "Is it thunder?" said the alarmed Viscount. "Loken, stop torturing innocent citizens," said the Duke. He told him that the time had come to open the gates and answer for his sins. The Viscount informed the Duke that he did not have the right to do this. "What are you doing?" the Count shouted. He ordered to open fire on them. The Viscount gave the order to the captain to kill all the rebels. The captain told the knights to kill everyone who disobeyed. "Did you hear?" asked the commander. He ordered the soldiers to open fire. The knight said that he could not attack his family. "You still are," the commander cried. He was amazed by the Duke's technique. The knights did not understand what was happening. The Duke stood in front of them, activating the fiery mana finger technique. The captain was amazed at Ethan's technique. He was shocked by her speed. The soldiers didn't even understand what happened, the captain reasoned. He did not understand how the Duke was able to hit a commander who was so far away from him with such accuracy. The Duke walked forward. He activated his air jump technique. The knights watched Ethan hanging in the air. "So that's how he jumped over the walls of the outer castle," said the Viscount. The Duke landed on the fortress where the knights were. For a moment, he froze, after which he pointed his sword at Loken. Loken was scared. "Viscount Loken, you refuse to surrender," said the Duke. "Don't think I'll be lenient," Ethan added. The Duke raised his sword above his head. "The flame of Arden is red, not black," the captain reasoned. "Otherwise everyone would have died as soon as they saw him," he continued to think. The captain believed that he had a chance to defeat the Duke. As long as the flame is not black, there are no guarantees of its victory, he thought. The captain thought there would be no problem with Ethan. He ordered the knights to attack Ethan from all sides. "Let's defeat the Archduke," cried the captain. The knights obeyed his order. Ethan was surprised by the attack from 4 directions. The Duke concentrated mana in his leg. Ethan defeated the knights with just 1 blow. The captain thought that the Duke was using the sword's range to fight back. Ethan prepared for the next attack. The Duke did not understand what was wrong with the knights' stances. "Have you taught the knights the techniques of the Dragon Clan?" asked an enraged Ethan. The captain did not understand what the Duke was talking about. He told him that this was nonsense. Ethan said that they combined with human sword technology. "They could have fooled someone else, but not me," added the Duke. He informed them that it was the stand of the Dragon Clan Dragon of Destruction. Taught them this, even knowing that dragon breathing and swordsmanship techniques have side effects. Ethan asked. The knights were shocked by this. One of them asked the Duke if it was true. "You really taught us dragon techniques?" asked the young man. The Viscount orders the soldiers to ignore his words. He told them that the Duke was trying to deceive them. "How cruel! It seems that only the 4 of you and the Viscount knew about it," said the Duke. The captain ordered Ethan to close his mouth. He asked the soldiers not to listen to him. "Forcing knights to learn techniques with side effects for your own benefit. You are worse than I thought, Viscount Loken," the Duke shouted. The main character activated the solar prominence sword explosion technique. The plot tells us that a prominence is a giant fountain of hot gas that rises and is held above the surface of the sun by a magnetic field. Ethan attacked the knight. Their swords clashed in battle. After the Duke's blow, the knight flew into the wall. The soldiers could not believe their eyes. Their swords simply crossed, but there was an explosion. The captain reasoned. Seeing how you behave, I can conclude that you four and the Viscount are in cahoots with the dragons, Ethan said. The captain was confused. How could I even think of opposing such technology, he reasoned. He informed the knights that the Duke was alone. He ordered to surround him. Surround? Ethan asked with a grin on his face. The knights froze in anticipation of further action. He's going to lower the gate, the captain cried. He ordered the knights to stop him. Gotcha, said the Duke. At the same moment, the knight launched an attack on the three. The shock wave scattered them in different directions. The captain couldn't believe his eyes. Attack from behind? Ethan asked. He told the captain that they were still far from real knights. The Duke cut off the chains that were holding back passage into the city. The gates were open. Manhwa informed the army that the Archduke had opened the gates and then gave the order to advance. The man called on people to help the Archduke. The Viscount was very frightened. The captain ordered the knights to stop them and told the soldiers to deal with the townspeople. He asked them to hold on no matter what. The captain said he would stop the Archduke. Ethan attacked him. Due to the powerful attack, the captain was thrown to the side. He was shocked by this. He defeated 5 level knights with one blow. Even I, having the 6th level, cannot resist him, reasoned the captain. At that moment, the Viscount understood how Kargas and Lomenton felt. He was shocked that the Archduke had dealt with them alone. Loken thought that the Duke was hiding his power. Manhwa ordered the army to attack, and the enemy was losing ground. The battle between the Duke and the captain continued. The army, along with the townspeople, headed straight to the Viscount's estate. It got dark outside. In front of us was the Blotton estate. Father, this is the man recommended by the Archduke, said the young man. Pophorin greeted the Count. Blotton said that he was glad to meet the best blacksmith. He asked the dwarf to follow him. There is a lot to be prepared before the council meeting with the Emperor, said Blotton. He warned Pophorenza that he might feel a little dizzy. They moved into the portal. The light from the portal gave off a powerful glow. Pophorenza and Blotton finally emerged from it. The dwarf was shocked. Before him was a view of the Parantium. Welcome to the capital of the Hydern Empire, Parantium, said the Count. Blotton informed Pophorenza that he would make him a blacksmith for the imperial family. A bright flame hung over the city. The wounded soldiers lay unconscious. Fierce battles took place everywhere. The Viscount was very frightened. The captain rushed to attack the Duke. He used the 10th form technique. A red aura formed around the Duke's body. His sword was overflowing with mana. Ethan attacked the captain. You must be confident in the speed of your attacks, the Duke said. He told the captain that he would show him Arden's attack. The Duke has unlocked the 8th ring. He activated the solar prominence technique. The captain was shocked by Ethan's technique. There was a strong explosion. The townspeople and knights took notice of him. The wounded captain lay in front of them. Ethan waited for further action. Intend to send his subordinates to fight in your place, Loken, shouted the Duke. He told Loken that if he was a real knight, then he himself must end this. Loken said he did nothing wrong. Why should I? He continued. Ethan called him a coward who didn't deserve to be an aristocrat. The Duke activated his air jump technique. He was heading straight towards Loken. The Duke told the Viscount that he should be ashamed. Ethan kicked Loken in the chest. He screamed in pain. After that, he fell to the floor. The Duke told the knights that Loken had fallen. He asked them to put down their weapons. Manhwa said that the battle was over. He ordered Loken's subordinates to surrender. Manhwa added that they will attack anyone who does not put down their weapons. The knights laid down their weapons. The Duke reported that from this moment on, the Viscountcy was under the control of Arden. The city residents rejoiced. Long live the Duke, they shouted. Hooray for Arden. The townspeople continued. The subordinate informed Shimon about important news. Vice Captain Greg, you must be on a mission, the Count said. Shimon asked him if something had happened. Greg stated that Viscount Loken had fallen. The Count was in shock. The castle was captured in just 2 days. He asked. Shimon assumed that Loken had given up. No, we interrogated the escaped soldiers. The Archduke's knights opened the inner gates and won the battle with the help of the townspeople, Greg said. Shimon said he would listen to a detailed report later. The Count was taken aback. Shimon said that Loken had a captain of 6th level knights and 4 5th level knights. If, despite this, the Archduke managed to open the inner gate, this may mean that he is almost at the 6th level, said his subordinate. The Count noted the fact that not even 6 months had passed since the Duke's awakening. It's almost impossible to believe, he added. Shimon asked the captain if he thought the 1st Division could defeat the Archduke. The plot tells us about the 1st Division, the most elite knights of the 100 knights of the county. They are Count Shimon's secret weapon. They had mastered the techniques of the dragon family exactly. Therefore, they have no choice but to remain in the shadows. The captain guessed that the Archduke had most likely barely reached level 6. A 6th level newbie is very different from a veteran, he added. The captain talked about how they were professional knights who would soon reach level 7. There are 12 of us, including me and the vice captain, so there will be no problems, he said. The captain believed that 2 knights of the 1st division were enough to defeat the Archduke. Okay, then I'll use the Archduke a little more, Shimon said. Tell the butler to reduce taxes and stop distributing the new dragon book, the count said. The subordinate said that he would carry out his order and also convey this to the families of the faction. Make sure everything remains a secret, Shimon added. He considered it important that Lugon never find out about this. The captain obeyed him. Menharten gave commands to the knights. The Duke finished checking the documents. He stated that Lawrence excelled at his job. The Duke asked if he needed anything else. With the expansion of your territories, there are more working people and supplies, so there is no problem, the advisor replied. Lawrence noted that Ethan had reclaimed much of the southern region of the duchy. The advisor added that if the Duke seized another possession, he could implement a plan to divide the duchy into 3 parts to wage a war for influence. Lawrence told Ethan that Shimon would soon try to contact him. Then you can use it as a shield to fight against Viscount Lugon's faction, the advisor said. Perhaps Lugon believes that we are cooperating with Shimon and will not be able to act rashly, Lawrence added. The Duke believed that this was not so. They probably think I'm acting out of rage, Ethan said. The Duke believed that the counts did not see the whole picture because they were busy with the war of factions. Ethan assigned this task to Lawrence. Make them think like that before the Enlightenment ceremony, said the Duke. The advisor said that he would carry out his order. It was night outside. The Viscount read the document thoughtfully. Tomorrow's tax collection area, Loken said. The captain was taken aback. Suddenly, a portal opened in front of them. They were shocked when a stranger in a cloak came out. The captain asked him who he was. The stranger extended his hand. I showed up early so you knew I was coming, he said. The stranger asked if they were surprised. The captain asked him what he was doing here in the middle of the night. A magician who couldn't be sensed by a 5-level knight is bad, reasoned the Viscount. He asked the captain to stop. The captain told Manhwa that he would grab him right now. The magician's eye glowed red. An ominous aura appeared around him. Is this a coverage area? The Viscount thought to himself. The magician put a knife to the captain's throat. The captain asked him what he needs from them. The magician asked them to calm down, because he came here to negotiate. To find out the Duke's secret, he added. It looks like you extorted money from a lot of people, said the knight. Perhaps you are an assassin hired by the Lugon faction who has gone crazy because of this, said the Viscount. The magician asked Loken if he wanted to become stronger. His power is more stunning than your coverage area, Archhero, said Loken. The Viscount believed that if he did not accept the magician's offer, he would kill them on the spot. Loken spoke of how they accepted the texts of the Dragon clan, and his knights received great power. The Duke noted that dragon techniques have side effects. He asked the Viscount if he felt guilty for deceiving his subordinates. Archduke, even in the duchy where dragons are hated the most, many people have already learned their techniques, Loken said. And what do you think other regions would do? Asked the Viscount. He told the Duke that they were simply following a general trend. Ethan was furious. I understand, now, about the magician who appeared before you that night, said the Duke. He asked the Viscount to tell about the organization to which the magician belonged. This, said Loken. Ethan grabbed him by the throat. The Duke called him a coward, who, as soon as he found himself in danger, immediately changed his attitude. Do you think this is the right time to test me? Said an angry Ethan. The Viscount informed him that if he told about this, then not only he would be in danger, but also his family. The Duke called him a pitiful worm. Why do you think I ask about them? Ethan continued. The main character asked the Viscount that if he told, it would be easier for him to get rid of them. The Duke noted that in this case the Lecken family would be safe. Lecken agreed with him. The Duke threw him to the floor. The Viscount told him that the magician who came that night was an intermediary. The magician told the Viscount to go to the Viscounty of Delgorn to find a person with such a badge. We are transported to the meeting room. The counts did not understand why the dwarf was there. The king asked if everyone was here. He stated that before the meeting begins, he sees that a new participant is present. The king asked him to introduce himself. Poference listened to the king's order. He spoke of being here in place of Archduke Ethan Arden. The dwarf added that he had received a letter from the Duke. Arden? Asked the surprised guy. He sent the dwarf because, the woman said. One of the council members whispered something in the king's ear. The king asked if this was true. He turned his attention to the document. The king noted that this was interesting. It says here that the royal blacksmith is collaborating with the dragon tribe, the king said. The council members were shocked. The king was confused. Blotton noticed that the king was extremely uncomfortable. Is it because one of his subordinates is connected with dragons or because he himself collaborates with them? The count reasoned. Poference was taken aback. He must be in the palace right now, Ethan mused. He was glad that the preparations that concerned the Viscount were perfect. He believed that it was time to begin the issue of Dragon Flame. Ilia was heading to the Duke's office. Fisgraff told Ethan that she had succeeded in developing what he asked her to do. She showed him a well-rounded whetstone. Ilia noted that with the help of this stone the Duke would be able to sharpen his sword anywhere. Ethan asked to continue knocking. "Are you listening to me?" Fisgraff screamed. The Duke asked if Ilia knew this man. "Melaces, this curmudgeonly weirdo," she asked. Fisgraff said she knows a lot about magicians. She asked the Duke if he was looking for this old eccentric. Ethan said it was. "I'm very busy, but if you beg me, I can help," said Ilia. The Duke asked her to pack her things. He added that they are leaving right now. The Duke and Ilia set off. Ethan called out to her. He asked Fisgraff about Melaces. Ilia told the Duke that he specialized in enhancing the properties of ingredients. She noted that it was like alchemy. Anything he touches, even an ordinary piece of metal, can be used to create a famous sword, the Hermit Mage continued. Ilia added that in comparison, his magical skills weren't particularly impressive. The Hermit Mage believed that he was at best level 4. "But why do you ask?" Fisgraff asked. "It doesn't look like we're going to a tea party since you brought swords with you," Ilia was saying. The Duke said he needed to check and ask something. Ethan noted that the swords might come in handy, depending on his answer. The coachman stopped the carriage. Ilia assumed they were in the right place because she sensed Melaces' mana. She warned the Duke that there were traps and magic circles of safety everywhere. "It would be a shame to just go there," Fisgraff added. Ethan asked her if there was a better way. Ilia told the Duke to trust her because she was an 8th level mage. She stated that she could easily get rid of these weak magic circles. "So quiet that he won't even understand what happened," added the Hermit Magician. Explosions were heard throughout the area. The traps kept going off. Fisgraff was furious. Ilia deactivated the trap again. "The old paranoid man, how much has he created?" said the indignant Fisgraff. "Does he want to compete with me?" Ilia screamed. She stated that she would destroy all the traps. "Just wait for me, old man," the Hermit Mage shouted. The Duke reminded her that she had promised to do everything quietly. Judging by the fact that she disguises herself as an old woman, they must be close, Ethan reasoned. Ilia headed towards the next seal. There was a strong explosion. "Smelly old man, how dare you make me do all this work?" said the dissatisfied Fisgraff. She shouted the old man's name and asked him to come out. "Every time you come here, you destroy all the magic circles, like a bandit," Melaces said. He asked Ilia to warn about his arrival, so that he would tell her where the traps were. "Forgot, or what?" Melaces asked. Fisgraff asked him why she had to ask permission from someone like him to come here. "You should have known that I would come and remove these circles," added the mad hermit. Ethan assumed she had forgotten about it. Melaces asked Ilia not to be stubborn, because canceling and recreating circles takes too much time. He considered it unimportant since Fisgraff wasn't listening to him. He believed that it would be faster to talk to the Archduke. "So you know who I am?" Ethan asked. Melaces noted that despite his location, the news reaches him. "I realized who you are when the first magic circle was destroyed," the magician added. He assumed he knew why they came here. Melaces asked them to come in. There were torches burning opposite the entrance to his house. Ilia was shocked when she learned that Melaces was collaborating with the Dragon Clan. Fisgraff added that the magician had gone too far, so he had lost his honor. The magician noted that times have changed. "As a magician, you should be open to new things," he added. "So I understand that you did not come to get rid of me?" Melaces asked. The Duke said that he was not just a murderer, he wanted to listen to him. "You may not have heard about this, since you recently came out of a coma, but over the past 10 years, abroad and in territories outside the duchy, the techniques of the Dragon Clan have quickly come into use," the magician said. From what I have seen, people who do not have a dragon heart and try to imitate the breathing technique shorten their lives," answered the Duke. Ethan wondered about people studying them even though they knew about it. Melaces said that magicians may seem obsessed with knowledge, but we are not simpletons. The magician added that they disassembled their techniques and carefully studied them. So most people received only their benefits and avoided the negative consequences, Melaces continued. He noted that he is also one of these people. The Duke thought this was reasonable. Ethan thought about doing the same thing. The magician was glad that the Duke thought so. He told him that thanks to dragon techniques, new levels of power appeared. "New levels?" the Duke asked. Melaces told him about 10 stars for knights and 10th level for magicians. He added that this is the limit for people. The magician noted that everything has changed now. "Now there are people with 11 stars and 12 stars, Melaces continued. Ilia was shocked by this. "Above 10 means," Ethan said. The Duke assumed that with the dragon breathing technique, their amount of mana exceeded the threshold level and due to this they neglected training. I want to ask you an important question, so answer honestly, Melacy, the Duke said. Ethan told him that he was pursuing the Neuraxis Brotherhood, which worshipped the Dragon Clan, which led him here. The Duke asked Melacy to give a reason why he should let him live. The magician noted that there are not so many of these reasons. We mages desire knowledge in the highest level, and the key to this was the texts of the Dragon Clan that the Brotherhood offered, Melacy said. He added that this was the reason they made the deal. The magician noted that he was not interested in the Brotherhood and their faith, and he also did not join the Order. Order? Asked the Duke. Is it possible that the Order is connected to this? Ethan continued. Melacy stated that it was a symbol of the magical association of the Arcana. Ilian noted that this was the first time she had heard of such a magical association. Melacy told them that this was a secret organization that consisted only of powerful magicians selected by the Hydern Empire. Like a group representing all magicians, he added. The magician stated that he received an invitation from. Ilian said it was the funniest joke she had ever heard from Melacy. Have you been contacted by the Order of Representatives of the Nation's Magicians? Asked Fisgraft. Ilian was puzzled that they had not contacted her. Melacy called her a little brute. Every time you underestimate me when I get a chance, the magician cried. Melacy noted that he is better than the doppelganger who lives in the cave. Fisgraft was furious. I told you not to call me that, she shouted. The magician said that Ilian started it. Magicians become stronger thanks to dragon techniques, the Duke reasoned. He wondered about a secret order of the elite. Melacy told Ilian that he would show her the power of a great magician. Melacy, Fisgraft shouted. Ethan asked them to stop. So, magicians occupy high positions in the palace? Asked the Duke. The magician replied that it was so. Melacy told Ethan that they were either important members of the Brotherhood or related to them, like he was. The Duke thought that the magicians were already lost. The palace blacksmith may be connected with the Seventh Kingdom, related to the Dragon Clan. Ethan continued to think. He understood that in this case the entire palace would be sold to the dragons. Or this has already happened, the Duke reasoned. Ilian said that she destroyed one of the magic circles, which was beyond the old man's capabilities. The Duke guessed what this meant. She interrupted him and said that someone else knew they were here. Fisgraft said that Melacy's fate was to die at the hands of the Duke, or to be killed by representatives of the Order. The hermit magician suggested that Ethan take Melacy's with him. She said that the magician would be useful as an assistant. The main character believed that there was no reason to refuse. The Duke noted that Melacy is not a member of the Order and does not work with the Dragon Clan. Ilian was happy about this. She said she would keep Melacy on a leash like a dog and use him until he died. The Duke thought that Melacy would have preferred to die instead. The magician noted that he had no choice. He said that if he became their subordinate, he would be protected. Melacy believed that his work would not be much different from his previous one. Ilian turned her attention to the Duke. Ethan asked if she brought the communication crystal. Fisgraft asked to take it. Fisgraft said that Lawrence should contact the Duke. He didn't understand who they were talking about. Lawrence told the Duke that Count Shimon had sent him an urgent message. As you expected, the advisor added. The Duke asked Lawrence to take Manhwa and the knights to invade the Viconnus of Ithan. Ethan informed him that he was leaving immediately. He said that Ilian and Melacy would go with him. He noted that it was time for them to move forward. The plot takes us to the Pleston region of the Ithan Viscounts. Angry residents rioted. Manhwa drew his sword. He ordered the soldiers to hold their positions. The head of the knights noted that he was strong. Manhwa said that they cannot fail just because he is alone. The plot introduces us to the captain of the Knights of the Vicountry, Nerian Porathkal. Manhwa was alarmed that the envoys of the Vicountry were right here. He could not believe that one man had stopped them. Nerian rushed at Manhwa. The knights decided to attack him. The leader ordered them to remain in place and hold their positions. Nerian defeated the knights with one attack. Manhwa was shocked. Nerian said that the Duke's order of knights were incompetent fighters. He said goodbye to the head of the knights. Manhwa did not know what to do. The portal attacked him. Ethan's technique was aimed at him. The Duke's technique was covered in a red aura. The main character was surprised that such a strong knight appeared in the Viscountcy. He was surprised that Nerian noticed his attack in time. The Duke asked Porathkal that he leaves his enemies alive because he is confident in his skills. Nerian said he wasn't so arrogant. The captain noted that he simply believed that he could surpass them without killing them. The Duke apologized to Manhwa for being late. The main character said that he took care of Nerian. Ethan said he was leaving the Viscount to him. Manhwa obeyed his orders. I am Nerian Porathkal, captain of the Knights of the Vicountry, he said. Nerian apologized for pointing his sword at Archduke Arden. The Duke became wary. The portal attacked him. Ethan thought that Nerian was faster than when he fought Manhwa. The Duke assumed that he was hiding his strength. He is about the level of 6 stars, like Polton. No, he is closer to 7 stars, the Duke reasoned. Ethan thought about how the weight of Nerian's sword was different from those that doubled mana. The portal struck Ethan. The Duke was able to block his attack. The main character reasoned that Nerian knows all the basics of wielding a sword, but his blade is filled with doubt and anxiety. Nerian believed that, at best, the Archduke's mana was at the level of 4 stars. The portal didn't understand why it couldn't find an open place. They stepped away from each other. Ethan wanted to ask Nerian something. The portal was expecting his question. The Duke asked him if all the knights of the side branches used techniques that were similar to the techniques of the Dragon Clan and Arden's secret techniques. He did not understand why Nerian did not use them, being the captain of the knights. The captain thought about it. Portical said that the basics of a knight were the right mind and body. He talked about how he did not stoop to destroying his body for the sake of power. The Duke was happy about this. He said that was a good answer. Ethan discovered the 8th ring technique. Nerian was shocked. The main character said that he would fight him using true strength, like a real knight would do. He activated the explosive sword technique. The portal prepared to defend itself. An explosion was heard throughout the kingdom. Nerian was amazed. It was located around the remains of the kingdom. You should know by now what it means for me and my knights to rush in here along with the civilians, Ethan said. The Duke noted that Nerian still has time to correct his actions. Ethan said that if Portical considered himself a true knight, then he needed to remember what he was fighting for. Nerian's gaze was directed at the Duke. Is there still a chance for someone like me who has given up the truth? Asked the captain. The Duke said that it depends on your actions from now on. Ethan talked about how he would personally cut the chains that held Nerian. Portical said he would wait for this. The Arden flag fluttered in the wind. The side branches that have fallen up to this point are Kargas, Deccan, Lomenton, and It. 4 territories and 120 knights. 136 days have passed since the Duke came out of his coma. Ethan gathered strength to resist the side branches. And the news about the decree, according to which everyone in the duchy must live, spread throughout the Hydern Empire. The man walked forward. He knocked on the door. He was allowed to enter. Wellington said he came with a report. The king asked whether Wellington had completed his investigations concerning Archduke Arden. Falsky said yes. He said that difficulties had arisen due to his visit to the royal blacksmith. Duke Rajan, yes, asked the king. He asked Wellington how the investigation into their relationship was going. Falsky said they obtained evidence that he was secretly supplying weapons, but because of secrecy, he was unable to obtain more information. The king reasoned that Duke Gerund Rajan opposed the politics of the Dragon Clan when he had the chance as a representative of one of the 7 kingdoms. He understood that Gerund was the leader of the aristocracy. This is not a person with whom I can easily do something, even in the position of an emperor, the king continued to think. Falsky said that they demoted Williams, but were never able to remove him from the imperial court. Wellington told the king that he had failed. The king noted that it could not be otherwise, given that the count and the aristocrats were against it. He said that Falsky had done a good job and asked him to raise his head. He thought it was normal that the investigation was moving slowly. The king said that Wellington only needed to make sure that the identities of the spies would not be revealed. The king said that the spy organization Red Moon, which cooperates with him, is the last thing he has left against the Dragon Clan. Lawrence thought everything went smoothly. The advisor said that the blacksmith of the imperial court, William, was fired and Pafarenza was hired. He noted that this is only for a year. The Duke asked if this was a temporary position. Ethan assumed it would become permanent if something went wrong. The main character believed that the emperor was sincere regarding the politics of the Dragon Clan. He asked Lawrence what the reaction was to the fighting within the duchy. The advisor replied that, apparently, now he would just wait and watch. The Duke assumed that he had doubts. Everything is great as long as he doesn't interfere, Ethan added. The main character said that balance in the imperial court is like a slowly falling evening. The Duke said that soon it would be possible to verify the strength of each side. He watched the knights train. Ethan asked Nerian how the training was going. The captain was surprised by his presence. The Duke considered it an excellent advantage that a knight who was close to the 7-star level join the knightly order. He was glad that he could leave the management and discipline of the knights to him. Ethan noted that Nerian had recently joined and was already working so hard. The Duke called him very reliable. Ethan reasoned that thanks to Nerian, the knights had improved their skills. The Duke asked the captain to gather all the knights. Nerian asked why so many suddenly. Ethan said that the new knightly order needed a new fighting technique. The army was collected and formed. The Duke said that right now there are more than 100 knights here, gathered from 4 families. Ethan noted that everyone's sword skill and command systems are different. The Duke said that from now on everything will be like in the Order of the Knights of Arden. Ethan talked about how they would use the techniques he was about to present. He ordered the knights and representatives to get into position as they were about to begin. The Duke noted that without using mana, the knights attacked the Duke. Ethan began to dodge their attacks. One by one the soldiers attacked him. The Duke got into position. He parried their attacks. Due to the force of the blow, the knight flew to the side. The knight screamed in pain. The man rushed to attack the Duke. Ethan blocked his blow. The man thought he could suppress the Duke by force. Suddenly, the Duke grabbed his hand. He knocked the man to the ground. He started screaming in pain. The two knights continued to attack him. Using incredible speed, he dodged their attacks. They were confused. Then, Ethan struck down first one and then another knight. Manhwa prepared to attack the Duke. Their swords clashed. Manhwa was shocked by the Archduke's strength, which was not supported by fire mana. He didn't understand that this was a sword technique. The Duke was behind him. Manhwa was shocked. The Duke knocked the head of the knights down. Manhwa fell to the ground. Only Ethan and Nerian remained on the battlefield. The portal thought. He believed that the Duke would teach them his family's sword skills in order to restore Arden's honor. Nerian didn't understand what sword style Ethan was using. The portal attacked the Duke. The main character was taken aback. Nerian continued to attack. Suddenly, the captain stopped. He watched as the enraged dragon stood behind the Duke. Ethan attacked Nerian. The portal dodged his attack. Ethan's hand reminded him of a dragon's. The Duke grabbed the captain's hand. Nerian swung his sword in defense. He was very scared. The Duke dodged his blow. Ethan rushed at him again. The portal was confused. He was amazed that the Duke was using a technique that involved a low stance. Nerian tried to parry the Duke's blow. Ethan became wary. The Duke carried out an attack on the portico. Nerian's sword was broken. Ethan held the sword to his throat. The captain said he lost. They could not understand how the Duke had defeated 6 of them with one sword. The knights gathered around Ethan. The captain wanted to say something to him, but the Archduke interrupted him. The main character said that most of those present had gathered here because of their love for Arden, but who had no choice but to swear allegiance to the Senate due to the tyranny of the collateral branches. He continued. The Duke asked how they came to love Arden. Ethan assumed it was because of their skill. He noted that the Ardens are considered the best on the Western continent. Ethan asked the knights if they knew how the Arden family reached this level. The Duke told the knights that his family was not tied to aristocratic status. They studied the techniques of the barbarians and improved them. Nerian was surprised when barbarians were mentioned. Those who started the war against the Hydern Empire 100 years ago. Asked the captain. The Duke said that there are no evil or good techniques. Ethan talked about how it all depends on the person using them. The protagonist revealed that the sword skill he showed them was a combination of his family and the Dragon Clan's techniques. Ethan said that the new sword technique he invented was called the Sword and Dragon Slaying Technique. Manhwa was shocked by its name. The captain thought that Arden's blade killed dragons. Nerian stated that the reason why the Duke indicated to accept the techniques of the Dragon Clan was. The Duke said it was true. The protagonist informed them that they would be trained in the Duke's family's new technique and become the greatest order of knighthood on the continent. Ethan asked who wants to be with the Ardens. Nerian swore allegiance to the family of Archduke Arden. The knights swore allegiance to Archduke Arden. They took the oath to the Duke. Ethan watched the mana he had accumulated in his hand. The main character guessed that it would be a stronger army than they expected. Lawrence asked if the Duke intended to restore the Black Flame Legion. Ethan stated that he wouldn't do it because the current one had changed too much. The story tells that the Black Flame Legion is the official knightly order of the Arden family. They were the pride of the family, as they consisted of the most elite knights in the entire continent. They exterminated the Dragon Clan, and Arden's detachment with the principle of do or die was formed thanks to them. But due to the management of side branches, in fact, they almost all disappeared. The main character said that the war against dragons is still going on. He stated that it would soon enter a new phase. Ethan said that from now on, this order will be a replacement for the Black Flame Legion. The Duke added that he would become the most elite order on the continent to exterminate the dragons. Laughter was heard from the window. Shimon was glad that the Viscountry of Itten also fell. He reasoned that he and the Archduke were allies. The Baron thought that Lugon still did not know the Archduke's goal. He believed that at this rate the Archduke would take care of Lugon. Shimon thought about when the time would come. Suddenly, a subordinate ran into his room. He stated that he had an urgent message. Shimon was unhappy because his subordinate forgot about manners. His subject said that the Archduke would attend a meeting of the Senate. The Baron was shocked by this. He was amazed that it happened earlier than he thought. Shimon understood that this would lead to the Duke's rage spreading to him, and not just to Lugon. The Baron said that he would call an urgent meeting of the Senate. He ordered his subordinate to inform the others about this. The subordinate obeyed his order. Shimon understood that he had no choice, so he would have to speed things up a little. The flag fluttered in the wind. Ethan declared that the time had come. He talked about the time to return the duchy and cleanse it of the parasites that sucked the blood from the Arden family. The Duke added that all this took place on behalf of the Senate over a period of 10 years. The main character announced that they are a squad of dragon slayers, will overthrow the Senate, and create a new duchy. The knights glorified the honor of Arden. The Duke considered this the true beginning. The story takes us to the city of Senner, the territory of Viscount Raymond, one of the 10 branches. The knights shouted that the Archduke was coming to them. The captain ordered the crystal ball to be brought quickly to report to the Viscount about this. The knight obeyed his order. The residents were shocked that Archduke Arden himself came to them. Ethan drove through the area of the city. The stranger was surprised that the Duke liberated the 4 fortresses. Residents begged for their release. The main character was ready. The Viscount said that there were still many empty seats, but since the matter was urgent, they would start the meeting right away. Near the door they heard someone stomping. The Viscount's subordinate informed him that the Archduke had just entered the city. Shimon was shocked. The enraged Viscount asked him why he only reported this now. Raymond asked what the guards behind the walls were doing. The Viscount asked his subordinate if he wanted to be punished for neglecting his duties. The subordinate was taken aback. Shimon found this strange. He reasoned that he had rushed to start this meeting on purpose because the Archduke had expressed a desire to attend it. The Baron did not understand how the Duke knew that they were holding it now. The subordinate told Ethan that he couldn't come in like that. He asked the Duke to wait a minute. The main character was heading to the meeting room. The members of the Senate were shocked by his arrival. The Duke said that he was glad to see everyone. He told them that he would also take part in this meeting. The Count shouted that this was against the law. He asked Ethan if he knew that only side families could attend the meeting. Lugon said that even if Ethan is an Archduke, he still has no right to attend the Senate meeting. The main character told him that he had received letters of authority from 4 elders who were not here now. He noted that all this had been personally approved by His Majesty. Ethan told the Count that he could express all objections to the king. He said he would be straightforward with the Count. Ethan ordered him to cut taxes in half and ban the distribution of written fortune-telling. Lugon was outraged. The Duke noted that if the Count did not submit, he would start a war against him. "You dare, it's so rude," said the enraged Lugon. The Count said, "Let's see if the Duke has the right to treat him like that." He called the captain of the knights, Zaret. The captain approached the Count. A strong flow of mana emanated from Zaret. The members of the Senate were shocked. Shimon was surprised by the strength of the 7-star knight. Shimon reasoned about the reason why he was trying to use the Duke. He understood that all this was to intimidate Lugon. Ethan thought that standing in front of him was the captain of the Red Lion Knights of the Emilton family, the 7-star knight, Zaret Clement. The main character asked if he had the right. The Duke activated streams of mana throughout his body. A red aura surrounded his body. Lugon was shocked by this. The Count was furious. He asked Ethan what he was doing. "That's what I wanted to ask," said the Duke. The main character asked Lugon if he was using the zone for cover. The Duke asked him if he wanted to add treason to his crimes. The man was shocked that Ethan had overpowered his coverage area so easily. He reasoned that not even a year had passed since the Duke came out of his coma. Ethan waited for Lugon's answer. The Count asked why Ethan didn't tell Shimon anything. The main character replied that he had no need to do this. He noted that Shimon had already accepted all his demands. Lugon was furious. "We are watching the knights who were on the street." The man was surprised when he saw the captain of the knights, Nerian. He apologized for the late greeting. The man noted that Nerian was difficult to notice because of his dark clothes. Nerian asked Ledival what was the matter. The vice-captain said everything was fine. "Dragon troops, what an ironic name for a group that copied the techniques of the dragon tribe," said Ledival. Nerian noted that the vice-captain laughs at him when he himself crawls at his feet in order to adopt those very techniques. Ledival asked the captain what he had just said. He was angry that Nerian dared to insult the Order of the Red Lion. Portical was surprised that Ledival was the vice-captain of the Order of the Red Lion. He assumed they had all been demoted. Ledival said that Nerian talks too much for a traitor. He added that the Archduke would be crazy to hire someone like Nerian as captain of the knights. Capital has drawn its sword. Nerian asked if Ledival had finished. Nerian noted that if the vice-captain wanted to fight, he could end his chatter and draw his sword. Ledival thought that Nerian had fallen for it. He asked him what he was doing. The captain said that they would not use deadly techniques. Nerian added that he did not want to cause problems for the Archduke by killing someone like Ledival. The vice-captain thanked him for his concern, but noted that there was no point in worrying about his death. Ledival told Nerian to be sure that he would make them spend the next 10 years chained to a bunk like their master. The captain talked about making sure Letival spent the rest of his life licking the boots of dragon. The vice captain ordered him to close his mouth. A fierce battle began. Letival was surprised when he saw the skill of the dragon tribe's sword. The vice captain reasoned that Nerian was adamant about using their skills. He considered him a hypocrite. He thought that he knew all the skills of their sword. Nerian's aura was like a dragon. Letival tried to block his attack. He didn't understand what kind of attack it was. The vice captain noted that it was different from the techniques he knew. Nerian's hand reached towards Letival. The vice captain did not understand what was happening. He ordered him to let him go. Nerian stated that Letival would pay for his insults. The vice captain thought that he was out for blood. He asked him to stop. Nerian attacked him. He hit the vice captain in the face. The commander informed Shimon that the coverage area had been identified. He added that the Archduke's mana had reached level 6. The captain noted that there was no energy from the black flame. Shimon was pleased with this. He guessed that at Ethan's skill level, he couldn't use black flames. Shimon could not believe it. He believed that the Duke simply did not deserve it. The Count reasoned that the Duke had used a mana spell. Shimon thought that the energy that comes from Ethan seems less than that of a 7-star. The main character did not know for sure what they were thinking about, but he assumed that they decided that they had the upper hand. Enjoy this feeling while you can, he continued to think. Ethan asked Lugon if he would obey his orders. The Count said that he needed some time to discuss. He asked to give him a week. The main character said that enough of this nonsense. Do you want me to wait another week while you have been fleecing the residents like crazy for 10 years? Asked the enraged Duke. He asked if it was then worth starting a war right now. Shimon was surprised by Ethan's serious attitude. He reasoned that he knew the Duke was quite arrogant, but he had no idea that he would be in such a hurry. Lugon believed that Ethan was just doing whatever he wanted. The Count understood that even if he won this war, he would not be able to kill the Archduke. Lugon thought that if he obeyed his orders, the faction would collapse. The Count was taken aback. He informed Ethan that he would obey his orders. Members of the Senate were surprised that it happened so easily. One of them said that income would be cut in half. The Duke said that he would do this from today. The main character said that he is done here, so he leaves. Ethan left the meeting room. Shimon stated that if everything necessary had been said, he would close this meeting. Members of the Senate said that I would also go. The subordinate turned to Lugon. The Count was beside himself with rage. He talked about how Ethan was only acting so arrogant because of his privacy. Lugon told his subordinate that they would prepare to attack upon their return. The subordinate obeyed his order. The Count was shocked by what he saw. He watched as Nerian stood over the defeated Letival. Lugon asked what they were doing. He ordered the vice captain to stand up. The subordinate begged him to wait. He asked the Count to let him figure out what had happened. The subordinate tried to find out from Letival what happened. He assumed that he was ambushed. He declared that he would immediately raise the entire knightly order. The vice captain informed him that he had lost to Nerian in a duel. The subordinate was shocked. He believed that the Dragon Slayer troops were a bunch of vagabonds who were gathered from all over the world. The subordinate was shocked that they had defeated the vice captain of the Red Lion Knights. He was very angry. The subordinate ordered him to get up. They all returned to the main castle. The main character believed that the Count's knightly order was just a joke. They are also called Red Lions. What a pity, added the Duke. The Count was very angry. Ethan got into the carriage. Lawrence suggested that the meeting went well. The Duke said everything went smoothly. He said that it remains to be seen how Lugon will react. Ethan asked the advisor to increase the number of spies in the territory. The Duke declared that they would set a trap. Lugon was very angry. The Count said that Keston did not respond. He thought that he had betrayed him. The Count asked his subordinate how people reacted. A subordinate told him that they complain less now because taxes have been cut in half. He told the Count that some ominous rumor was spreading. A subordinate reported that people were saying that taxes were reduced because Lugon lost to the Archduke. The Count ordered the people who spread these rumors to be brought in. Lugon was angered by the fact that the subordinate simply listened to them, and then, as if nothing had happened, simply dragged himself to him about it. He added that if the butler did not bring them, he would kill him. The butler said he would take care of it right away. The Count was furious. An unknown voice suggested that the Count was in a difficult situation. Lugon didn't understand who said it. He thought the butler said it. The stranger said that he was associated with the Arcana Magical Association and was also the 8th spiritual leader of the Brotherhood. The Count was very frightened. Lugon assumed that this was the Brotherhood of Neuraxis. The stranger thought that the Count was in a difficult situation because of the Duke. He noted that they will help with this. The Count did not understand why the Brotherhood could help him. The stranger said that they also did not like the Archduke. He added that once they got rid of him, they could avoid suspicion with this. The stranger handed him an object. Lugon thought that in his hands was the emblem of the kingdom of Rimdel. He thought that there were conflicts with this kingdom because of their borders. The Count continued to reason further. Lugon stated that if this was the case, he would send a knight captain, a vice captain, and a dozen knights. The stranger was happy about this. He added that they could contact later once they were ready. The stranger left the Count. Lugon laughed hard. The Count believed that with the help of the assassin's spiritual leader and his 10 elite knights, they could defeat the Duke. Ethan asked if the advisor had discovered a fraternity spy. Lawrence said there were only 6 Lugon spies. He noted that one of them is connected with the Brotherhood. The Duke assumed that the spy was working with them. The main character asked about the purpose of their assassination attempt. Lawrence told the Duke that all the spies were trying to find out what he was doing. Ethan asked the advisor to drop some information that he was going on a secret inspection tour of the territory. Lawrence asked if the Duke meant going alone. The advisor noted that he does not doubt Ethan's skills, but it could be dangerous due to the fact that the Brotherhood is involved. The main character said that if he takes the guards with him, they will not relax. He believed that it would be more effective if he lured them out himself. Lawrence asked a question. The advisor asked what about her. Elia was heading to the Duke's office. Fisgraf stated that she heard how the Duke needed her help, so she came to help. Ethan told her that this time they were going to fight. He knew that Elia was a great magician. The Duke assumed that she was more of the inventive type. Ethan asked if she was sure she could do it. Fisgraf stated that he would regret his doubts when he saw her in combat mode. The Duke asked what kind of combat mode we were talking about. Elia said that her combat mode is the highest point that a great magician can achieve. She added that Ethan should look forward to it. The sun was shining brightly outside. The Duke noted that they were quite careful. Elia said that they have been circling around each of the cities for a month now, but even no presence has been noticed. The hermit mage asked if Ethan was sure that someone was going to ambush him. The main character noted that this is their only chance. He guessed that was why they were being so cautious. Fisgraf heard something. The mysterious voice told the Duke to listen to him, but continued to walk. Ethan was surprised by the mana frequency whispering technique. Elia told him that ahead of them, about 50 meters away, there was a magic circle. She assumed that a lot of effort had gone into this circle. Fisgraf said it was still nothing. Elia added that this is the magic of prohibition in space. The hermit mage stated that as soon as they entered the circle, they would be stuck. Elia asked what the Duke was planning to do. Ethan said they've been waiting for them all this time. He declared that they would enter it. The Duke approached the beginning of the magic circle. There was an ominous aura around. A portal opened in front of them. Knights began to emerge from this portal. They surrounded the Duke and Elia. The man said that they fell into a trap. Ethan asked who you are. The man greeted Archduke Arden. He said his name was Eric. He was the 8th leader of the Naraxus Brotherhood. Eric was sure that the Duke had already guessed why they were here. The main character noted that the Brotherhood are professionals in assassination attempts. Ethan recognized one of those present. The guy said that the 10 years while the Duke was in a coma were the calmest. This is the end of your tyranny, Archduke, he declared. Streams of mana emanated from the knights. Eric informed the Duke that this impenetrable wall was the best magic circle of his Brotherhood. He added that Ethan should not even try to escape. The Duke noted that he talks too much. Ethan asked them to get down to business. The young man thought that the Duke was rather careless about all this, unlike others. He thought that by this point he had killed countless people. He thought that Ethan would be much more fun. Eric stated that unfortunately for that child behind the Duke, they do not spare even very young children. The 8th head of Naraxus told the Duke to consider this as bad luck. Elia told Eric that he was stupid. The hermit mage activated flows of mana throughout her body. She told them to taste the power of the great magician. Elia added that now they cannot go out without her permission. Fisgraf activated her technique. The knights were shocked. Elia, you are the inventor. The young man cried out. Fisgraf noted that he would go with him. The young man began to be sucked into the magic circle. The knights were confused. The spiritual leader found himself in a mysterious place. He thought he was in a spatial pocket that was different from the coverage area. The spiritual leader understood that this world was created by the magician himself. An idea came into his head. He stated that he would create his own coverage area here. Gradually, his aura began to cover the spatial pocket. The spiritual leader was taken aback. Elia said that if he had not done at least this, then the whole month they waited would have been wasted. He asked her to wait a second. The spiritual leader informed Elia that they had been searching for her all over the continent. He was glad to finally meet her. The spiritual leader invited her to join his Brotherhood. He added that they would adhere to all the conditions voiced by Elia. Fisgraf stated that their organization is pure evil. The hermit mage asked him if he really thought she would work with them. The spiritual leader was upset by this. He said that then she would have to die. Iliad thought his words were funny. She told him to try. The knights surrounded the Duke. Ethan realized that there was 1 7-star and 9 6-star knights in front of him. He was surprised that this was the first time since his return that he came face to face with so many strong opponents. The Duke understood that he was not afraid. Ethan believed that if he had been a coward, he would not have had the courage to swing the sword then. The main character ordered them to attack. Fire spears flew towards the spiritual leader. He dodged Iliad's attack. Fistcraft said he was running around like a little rat. The spiritual leader thought that Iliad was truly a great magician. But how will she cope with this? He continued to think. The spiritual leader asked the dragons to give him strength. He felt a rush of mana. The spiritual leader used the technique of possessing a dragon. The hermit mage was taken aback. Fistcraft didn't understand what was happening. Before her eyes, the spiritual leader began to turn into something. He took the form of a dragon. The spiritual leader ordered her to leave. His aura was felt everywhere. Iliad was surprised by his skill. Fistcraft thought that he had increased his mana and used dragon tongue magic. The spiritual leader said that he would make Iliad laugh. He added that she would die in the space she created. The hermit mage noted that the spiritual leader made the game a little more interesting. Die, cried the spiritual leader. Fistcraft activated her lightning wave technique. The knight was amazed that the Archduke's mana suddenly increased. He was shocked that Ethan was able to mislead them. The knight understood that despite his reluctance to admit it, the Duke was strong. The knights rushed to the attack. The main character activated the solar prominence technique. The Duke's entire body was covered in fire. Ethan got ready. The Duke struck all the knights with his flame. They were broken. The knight ordered them to retreat. He thought that for the first time he saw a skill that made the body fiery. The knight did not understand how to kill the Duke now. He ordered everyone to calm down. Even if he uses the secret art of the Ardents, he still cannot be invulnerable, the knight noted. He asked everyone to pay attention to the wound on his chest and Ethan. The knight said that if they try, they can wound him well, even if he uses the fire technique. The knight thought that there was a wound on the Duke's neck that he had inflicted on him. The 7-star knight said that they would not be able to repel the Duke's best attack. He ordered them to do what he said. The knight asked them to concentrate all the mana on their swords. A great knight of the 7th level. No wonder he is so insightful, reasoned the main character. Ethan thought that his trick wouldn't work on them the second time. The Duke thought that the body of fire is a technique of the secret art of the Ardents, which makes the body fiery and reflects all blows. Ethan understood that if he were in another dimension, their blows would be useless. He noted that this technique has its drawbacks. Ethan realized that this technique wasted a huge amount of mana. The Duke has 50% of his mana left. He thought that he had to deal with them as quickly as possible. Ethan used the solar prominence technique. The Duke took advantage of the fire fist dance. The knights have fallen. There is blood coming from their mouth. The main character realized that he had 40% of his mana left. The 7-star knight thought that their plan had worked. He ordered the others to fall on the Duke together so as not to give him any respite. The main character again used the solar prominence. Ethan used a split Kai attack. Due to the force of the blow, the knights scattered in different directions. The 7-star knight and another one attacked the Duke. They struck him with their swords. They realized that they had only scratched him. Ethan jumped away from them. The Duke knew that he had 30% of his mana left. The main character used the solar prominence with the third technique. Ethan used a high explosive sword strike. One of them was defeated. The knight reasoned that he could not get close to Ethan to strike. The main character continued to attack. He used the second technique of the solar prominence. The Duke used the detonator sword technique. An explosion occurred in the magic cube. Fire was spreading everywhere. The 7-star knight ordered not to lose the Duke in the smoke. He was shocked. The Duke defeated another knight. The 7-star knight was taken aback. The main character noted that now there were 3 of them left. The Duke had 10% of his mana left.